Chapter 1987. This was a reunion in the truest sense of the word. Qin Wentian's loved ones had all arrived. His father and daughter, Uncle Black, all of them appeared in the heaven vault. Everyone was safe. After experiencing a calamity, everything seemed to have become even more beautiful. Qin Wentian walked towards Qing'er. He gently stroked Qing'er's hair as his gaze was filled with love and gentleness. He softly spoke, "Silly lass." Qing'er lowered her head slightly when she saw Qin Wentian's gentle gaze. She actually felt a little shy. Before this, she had once transmitted a voice transmission to Qin Wentian, saying those 3 words. At that time, it was because she felt despair in her heart and thought that she would die for sure. But now that she thought back to it, why did she feel so strange? Qing'er smiled sweetly at the side. Mo Qingqing smiled sweetly at the side. Qin Wentian gently caressed her face, feeling an incomparable gentleness in his heart. "Yu Huang." Qin Wentian called out when he saw Yu Huang evading his gaze. Princess Kitamura inclined her head and stared at Qin Wentian. Her beautiful eyes seemed to be evading his gaze, not daring to look into Qin Wentian's eyes. "I know." Qin Wentian smiled. Yu Huang's heartbeat quickened. She lowered her head slightly, not daring to look into Qin Wentian's eyes. She naturally knew that Qin Wentian was replying to her voice transmission earlier. He always knew that she liked him. The eyes of the Dark North Immortal Emperor who was beside Princess Kitamura flashed. When he saw the relationship between Qin Wentian and his daughter, he seemed to have guessed something. After that, a faint smile appeared on his face. Qin Wentian's mother, Luoshan Qianxue, blinked her beautiful eyes when she saw this scene. A look of contemplation appeared on her face. She truly liked this beautiful young lady before her. When they looked at Qin Wentian, their gazes were the same as when she looked at Qin Yuanfeng. Such feelings couldn't be masked. "Curson, quickly come over." Luoshan Qianxue called out. Qin Curson's body trembled slightly. After that, she slowly walked over. She was so beautiful and her gaze was fixed on Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian seemed to sense her gaze and also stared at her. There seemed to be a strange energy that attracted the two of them. This was the kinship of blood. "Curson, this is your elder brother." Luoshan Qianxue gently spoke. Qin Curson's hands clutched the corners of her robes. She actually felt a little nervous as well. Her red lips moved, wanting to say something but she didn't know what to say. Qin Wentian had already walked up, staring at the absolute beauty in front of him. Indeed, she had inherited the excellence of her parents. Her beauty was extraordinary. "Curson." Qin Wentian gently called out. This was his younger sister, his blood-related younger sister. To think that he actually had a younger sister. Qin Curson started. When she saw the gentleness in Qin Wentian's eyes, she lowered her head and called out, "Elder brother." "This girl." Luoshan Qianxue walked over. She stared at her son and daughter, feeling incomparably gratified in her heart. Her family was finally reunited. "Let's go, we shouldn't stay here any longer. Let's go to the floating palace." At this moment, Luoshan Chuan walked over and spoke. Most probably, everyone had many things they wanted to say. "Yes." Qin Wentian nodded. "Father, mother, let's go to my palace. I still have many things I want to tell you guys. I met my grandfather in the heaven vault." "You met your grandfather?" Qin Yuanfeng's eyes gleamed with sharpness. "Yes." Qin Wentian nodded. "Let's talk as we walk. Uncle Yu, go and give the order for everyone in the divine sect to enter the heaven vault. I will temporarily close the heaven vault." Qin Wentian spoke to Qiyu. "All right." Qiyu nodded. After that, he flew towards the exit of the heaven vault. Right now, those who remained in the Qin heavenly divine sect were all trusted subordinates of the divine sect and worthy of nurturing. They were all good people who were willing to live and die together with the divine sect. The group of people came to Qin Wentian's palace. They had endless things to talk about. After so many years of experiences, the emotions hidden in their hearts all needed to be poured out. They talked about Qin Tiangong's return. Luotian Qianxue met with Luotian Yu again. When she saw her elder brother who doted on her crippled, her anger towered up into the sky. This was the first time Qin Wendian felt how powerful his mother was. She had an intense killing intent. Her elder brother was actually crippled by a junior. This was especially so after they learned that that junior, the so-called Heaven's Son, was none other than the young man who entered the divine mausoleum earlier. Before this, Qin Yuanfeng allowed him to cultivate in the divine mausoleum and didn't do anything to him. But now, Qin Yuanfeng wanted to get revenge for everything, including everything the Qin clan did to Qin Yuanfeng in the past. The people of the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect all entered the Heaven Vault. The Heaven Vault was closed, isolated from the world. The people in the external world had no idea what happened inside. However, since the Heaven Vault was closed, this meant that Qin Wendian might have returned and controlled the Heaven Vault. The Western Paradise actually failed to capture Qin Wendian and allowed him to escape. Qin Wendian was truly powerful, even the Western Paradise couldn't trap him. The Western Paradise also received the news and suddenly felt that something was wrong. Was that the reincarnation Buddha of their Western Paradise, or was it Qin Wendian? After the experts of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms received the news, they all felt extremely depressed. The Western Paradise actually failed to capture Qin Wendian and allowed him to escape back to the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect? Now, with the addition of that mysterious expert, wouldn't the strength of the Heaven Vault be heaven-defying? Right now, even if the experts of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms joined forces, it would be hard for them to take down the Heaven Vault. If a few more years passed, they wouldn't have a chance to do so. However, the Qin clan temporarily didn't think too much about this. Because, a joyous matter welcomed the Qin clan. Heaven's son Qin Dangtian has returned. Not only did he returned even more powerful than before. The people of the Qin clan knew that after Qin Dangtian returned, he sparred with Qin Zheng and wasn't at a disadvantage. Also, according to Qin Dangtian, this was because he hadn't completely stabilized his cultivation base. If he was given more time, he would definitely be able to grow even stronger. Qin Zheng and his wife knew that Qin Dangtian came from the Divine Mausoleum and obtained the inheritance power of the Divine Mausoleum. When they thought of how powerful the Tomb Keeper was, they felt anticipation in their hearts. Would Qin Dangtian become as strong as the Tomb Keeper? He would become an existence at the peak of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms. In the Qin clan, everyone was filled with joy. Back then when Qin Ding was exiled by Qin Tiangang, several heavenly deities of the Qin clan died as well. The strength of the Qin clan instantly fell by a few levels. Now that Qin Dangtian has returned, they could finally see hope for the Qin clan to recover. The good mood of the experts of the Qin clan lasted for several months. During these months, the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms were calm. The storm that erupted in the Heaven Vault seemed to have been forgotten by the people of the world. But everyone understood that things wouldn't be so simple. Qin Wendian escaped from the Western Paradise, how could he not settle this debt? Right now, the only thing the Heaven Vault was wary of should be the Western Paradise. If not, given the current strength of the Heaven Vault, they would have already killed their way out and started their revenge. The peace of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms was finally broken by a challenge letter. This challenge letter was sent out from the Heaven Vault and finally arrived at the Qin clan. The Qin clan instantly walked out from the joyous atmosphere. They didn't forget the humiliation they suffered in the past. Once, the Heaven's son of the Qin clan, Qin Dangtian, married the number one beauty of the Heaven region, goddess Nikhang, and invited the experts of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms to attend the banquet. Everyone celebrated and the glory of the Qin clan was boundless, unrivaled in the world. But what was the ending? The Qin clan suffered a great humiliation. Qin Ding was exiled, Heaven's son was defeated and several heavenly deities died. Right now, how similar was the situation? Qin Dangtian returned after becoming stronger and a challenge letter from Qin Wendian once again arrived at the Qin clan. History had to be remembered. They didn't dare to be careless and had to treat this seriously. The humiliation they suffered in the past definitely wouldn't happen again. This challenge letter not only caused a commotion in the Qin clan, it also shook the entire supreme ancient immortal realms. The various hegemonic powers have been paying attention to the movements in the Heaven Vault. Was this challenge letter the start of the Heaven Vault's revenge? The gazes of everyone were focused on a single location. The ancient and powerful Qin clan of the Heaven region. At this moment, in a great hall of the Qin clan, Qin Zheng and his wife, Qin Dangtian and a few heavenly deities of the Qin clan were all present. This time around, things might be a little troublesome. The current strength of the Heaven Vault is extremely powerful. Qin Zheng spoke. Back then when they attacked the Heaven Vault, they had already experienced it. Without the lips, the teeth would be cold. We have already informed the various hegemonic powers. If the Heaven Vault's army arrives, they wouldn't possibly stand aside and watch. If not, the next target would be them. A heavenly deity of the Qin clan spoke. Although this is the case, Wentian's current strength is also very strong. However, I'm still a little worried. Would the guardian of the divine mausoleum act? I can't help but feel uneasy. Qin Zheng spoke. That guardian made him feel very uneasy. Father, don't worry. Back then when I was in the divine mausoleum, I met with the guardian a few times. I've obtained the divine mausoleum's inheritance, I believe he would give me some face. In addition, Qin Dangtian spoke. He thought of that beautiful figure. She also came here. Now that he has obtained the divine mausoleum's inheritance and became stronger, he should be qualified to pursue her. In addition what? Qin Zheng asked. The daughter of the guardian. Father should have seen her before, right? What do you think of her? Qin Dangtian asked. Outstanding talent, unrivaled in beauty. Qin Zheng praised. He fought against Qin Kursan before. Although they were enemies, he was also impressed. Such a woman was extremely rare in the world. I will pursue her. I hope father doesn't mind the battle earlier. Qin Dangtian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. Goddess Nikhang had once betrayed him, causing him to feel a grudge in his heart. Now, he has already walked out of it. In addition, there were even more outstanding women waiting for him to pursue. Although it might be very difficult, now that he has the divine mausoleum's inheritance, there were no difficulties he couldn't overcome. Good. Qin Zheng praised. If Dang can successfully pursue her, how would father mind? In fact, I'm even willing to apologize to her. If such a woman could become the daughter-in-law of his Qin clan, it would definitely be a form of pride. He was only afraid that the divine mausoleum master had a very deep relationship with Qin Wentian. However, he didn't think of Qin Yuanfeng as he didn't dare to. In addition, Qin Dangtian had encountered him in the divine mausoleum. If it was Qin Yuanfeng, would Qin Dangtian be able to come out alive? Would he still be able to obtain the inheritance? But even if their relationship wasn't shallow, given how outstanding his son was, what was there to be afraid of? Time would change everything. If Qin Dangtian could pursue that woman, that tomb keeper would be a great help to their Qin clan. One couldn't help but say that Qin Zheng and Qin Dangtian's thoughts were very beautiful. However, they were destined to be disappointed. The ending was something they didn't want to see the most. Chapter 1988. The people of the world knew that a storm of blood would surely descend upon the Qin clan. Once, when Qin Wentian was weak, on the day of Qin Wentian's wedding, Qin Wentian led a group of experts here, causing a huge storm. Right now, the power Qin Wentian controlled was already incomparable to the past. Even if there was no Qiankuan sect or Nine Heavens mystical palace, just the power of the Heaven Vault alone was sufficient to contend against the hegemonic powers of the supreme ancient immortal realms. Most probably, the mere Qin clan was nothing in Qin Wentian's eyes. In addition to the grudge between the Qin clan and Qin Wentian, it was very clear that the war against the Qin clan this time around would be a decisive one. On the day of the battle, the Qin clan was in full battle formation. The experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms all arrived, but they didn't appear out in the open. They were observing in the dark, but they understood in their hearts that they were already tied together with the Qin clan. For those who participated in the battle against the Qin clan, they were all on the same side. None of them would be able to escape. Once Qin Wendian truly destroyed the Qin clan, his next target would surely be any of them. Within the Qin clan, at the peak of an ancient palace, Qin Zheng stood with his hands behind his back. His divine sense spread out, enveloping the boundless space as he spoke. "Everyone, since you are already here, there's no need to hide anymore. Could it be that you all think that if Qin Wendian really wants to deal with you guys, what's the point of hiding? This fellow." The experts here all cursed in their hearts. Qin Zheng was forcing them to show themselves. The Thunder Clan leader led the experts of the Thunder Clan out. The grudge between him and Qin Wendian was extremely deep, and it was true that they wouldn't be able to avoid a battle. With someone taking the lead, the experts of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms all walked out. "Qin Zheng, you seem very calm." The Prison God Clan leader calmly asked. "My son Dang Tian has already returned. He came from the Divine Mausoleum and obtained the inheritance there. He has also met the Tomb Keeper before, and his current strength is stronger than mine." Qin Zheng calmly spoke, his words causing the hearts of everyone to tremble. Heaven's son Dang Tian was already stronger than Qin Zheng. Moreover, he came from the Divine Mausoleum and obtained the inheritance of the Divine Mausoleum. Did that mean that he had some sort of relationship with the Mausoleum Keeper? Heaven's son Qin Dang Tian. Although he was defeated in the past, he was still a supreme character. The Qin clan was truly a terrifying clan. They had a character like Qin Dang Tian and an existence like Qin Wendian. What a pity. Originally, the Qin clan could have ascended to another height. Everyone was waiting quietly. Qin Zheng stared into the distance with his hands behind his back. Beside him, his wife was incomparably beautiful. Her purple dress fluttered in the wind, exuding a sense of nobility and coldness. Her beautiful eyes flickered with anticipation. Qin Kursin was very outstanding and could even fight against her husband Qin Zheng. If such a woman became her daughter-in-law, she would definitely be very satisfied. She believed that her son would be able to do it. Naturally, Qin Dang Tian himself also had immense self-confidence. The him now was no longer the him of the past. Heaven's son had undergone another transformation, and he already had the chance to touch upon that supreme realm. He didn't feel any fear at all. In fact, he was filled with anticipation. He was waiting for Qin Wendian's arrival. This time around, he would wash away the humiliation he suffered, using Qin Wendian's blood to wash away his shame. In the Qin clan, countless people stared up in the air, waiting. Back then, the Qin clan experienced a calamity. This time around, what would be waiting for them? Not even in their dreams would they imagine what would be waiting for them. The experts in the Qin clan were as many as the clouds. But at this moment, the atmosphere suddenly turned silent. From afar, the sound of the wind whistling could be heard. There seemed to be a surge of energy flowing over here. Gradually, a powerful pressure bore down. The wind gusted by, feeling somewhat cold. Finally, from afar, a group of figures appeared in the vision of everyone. "They're here." They silently mused. At this moment, they saw a gigantic demonic beast soaring through the air and swooping down. That gigantic beast was none other than the Kun Sovereign, the incarnation of the Kun Sovereign. On the back of the Kun rock, there were many silhouettes. Each of them exuded an extraordinary aura, and the person in the lead was clad in white. His long hair fluttered in the wind. Other than Qin Wendian, who else could it be? The Tomb Keeper didn't seem to be here. Beside Qin Wendian, there was actually that powerful mystical maiden. She came together with Qin Wendian. This caused people to suspect that could it be that this beautiful maiden also had a relationship with Qin Wendian? However, when Qin Wendian stood together with her, they did seem extremely compatible. One was handsome while the other was beautiful. In addition, both of them were supreme geniuses. When Qin Dangtian saw Qin Wentian, great waves rose in his heart. However, his expression was as calm as ever. Clearly, he was suppressing the fluctuations in his heart. Has it finally come? All the grudges would be resolved today. Everything should come to an end now. The Kun rock descended in the airspace above the Qin clan. Qin Wentian stared at the experts before him. His expression was cold and calm, with no fluctuations at all. We meet again. Qin Dangtian stared at Qin Kursin as he spoke. Qin Kursin calmly glanced at Qin Dangtian. Cold, there were no emotions in her eyes. It was like she didn't care about him at all. Qin Dangtian didn't mind. Her personality was like this, incomparably cold and arrogant. However, she naturally had the qualifications to do so. My name is Qin Dangtian. In the Divine Mausoleum, I obtained the inheritance. Qin Dangtian continued, his words causing strange expressions to appear on the faces of everyone. Looking at Qin Dangtian's attitude, it seemed like he wanted to pursue this supreme beauty. Qin Wentian also had a strange expression on his face. Qin Dangtian was interested in Kursin. This was truly a melodramatic plot. However, Qin Dangtian most probably didn't know how ridiculous this was. Who was Qin Kursin? She was his younger sister, Qin Yuanfeng's daughter. Who was Qin Dangtian? Qin Zheng's son. Qin Kursin basically couldn't be bothered with Qin Dangtian. Hence, Qin Dangtian turned his gaze to Qin Wentian as he calmly spoke, "You are finally here." Qin Wentian calmly glanced at Qin Dangtian. After that, he turned to Qin Zheng and his wife, as well as the people of the Qin clan. Today, I came to the Qin clan not only to resolve the grudge of the past. At the same time, I want the Qin clan to meet a few people. Qin Wentian calmly spoke. After that, he turned around. An aged figure walked over. It was none other than the Sky Order heavenly deity, Luo Xinyu. Bringing Luo Xinyu here was the intention of his mother, Luo Xin Qianxue. The Qin clan wanted blood to be repaid with blood. A loser, nothing but trash. Qin Dangtian coldly glanced at Luo Xinyu as he mocked. If that's the case, are you considered trash before me? Qin Wentian mocked. That was in the past. Today, everything will be different. Qin Dangtian stared at Qin Wentian, his battle intent soaring into the sky. Don't be in a hurry to fight. There are still 2 more people I want the Qin clan to meet. Qin Wentian calmly spoke. I once said that the Qin clan will regret everything you have done. Today, everything will become reality. The Qin clan will definitely not regret this. Behind Qin Zheng, a heavenly deity coldly spoke. Do you still want to seek justice for your father? He is a traitor of the Qin clan and should have died. Why would he regret it? You are a traitor, you will also follow in the footsteps of your father. Another person spoke. Qin Wentian stared at the ugly faces of these people as a cold smile appeared on his face. He truly wanted to see what kind of expressions they would have next. Qin Wentian didn't say anything more. He quietly stood there as the atmosphere turned silent once more. At this moment, a beam of light cascaded down from the sky. After that, 2 figures descended from the sky, appearing not far away from Qin Wentian. They stood there and stared at the Qin clan. When they saw these 2 clearly, Qin Zheng and his wife trembled violently as they stared fixedly at the 2 figures in the air. You are indeed still alive. Qin Zheng stared at Qin Yuanfeng. Back then when Qin Wentian appeared, they already guessed that Qin Yuanfeng might still be alive. Now, their guesses were proven true. Qin Yuanfeng has returned. Many old men of the Qin clan felt their hearts trembling when they saw the newcomer. They didn't expect that even after so many attacks, Qin Yuanfeng still failed to kill him. He actually returned alive and came to the Qin clan to seek revenge. You still dare to return? An old man from the Qin clan coldly spoke. Qin Wentian calmly watched everything. Qin Yuanfeng didn't dare to return. It has been many years since we last met. You have changed a lot. Qin Zheng's wife smiled at Qin Yuanfeng. When she smiled, she was extremely beautiful. However, she resembled a viper or a scorpion. However, Qin Dangtian, who was beside them, felt an intense sense of unease in his heart. Father, mother, he is. Qin Dangtian's voice trembled slightly. Dang this is your clan uncle. However, he betrayed the Qin clan. He is the traitor of the Qin clan, Qin Yuanfeng. Qin Zheng's wife spoke. At this moment, Qin Dangtian felt as though he was struck by lightning. His heart pounded violently as he stared at Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Kersen. How could this be? How could this be? The tomb keeper was actually Qin Yuanfeng. No. Qin Dangtian spoke in a low voice. His voice was trembling slightly. Upon seeing the change in Qin Dangtian, Qin Zheng and his wife frowned as a look of bewilderment appeared on their faces. Dang what's wrong? Qin Zheng's wife asked. Why was Qin Dangtian acting so strangely? Qin Wentian stared at Qin Zheng and his wife as he coldly spoke, your reactions are so slow. Do you guys still not understand? When Qin Zheng and his wife heard Qin Wentian's words, a bolt of lightning flashed through their minds. When they saw the strange expression on Qin Dangtian's face, they suddenly thought of something as their expressions drastically changed. This was especially so for Qin Zheng's wife. The smile on her face instantly turned pale. She inclined her head and stared at Qin Yuanfeng again. Several months ago, that incomparably imposing illusory figure appeared in the heaven vault. That unrivaled existence that she had to look up to, wasn't it similar to the figure before her? No, this is impossible. She spoke in a low voice, as though she was consoling herself. If he really was the tomb keeper, what would the consequences be? Everything would end. Dang Qin Zheng turned his gaze to Qin Dangtian. Father, he is none other than the tomb keeper of the divine mausoleum. Qin Dangtian's words were like thunder from a clear sky, causing the hearts of everyone in the Qin clan to tremble. The experts from the supreme ancient immortal realms also felt their hearts pounding. Everything finally connected, everything became clear. However, the truth caused them to feel fear. The tomb keeper was Qin Yuanfeng. In that case, what was his relationship with Qin Wentian? Father and son. Chapter 1989. Qin Yuanfeng, the tomb keeper of the divine mausoleum. Several months ago, he borrowed the Tao from the starry space and appeared in the supreme ancient immortal realms, using his Tao incarnation to force the various deities to retreat. At that moment, countless people stared at him in admiration, sighing at how powerful the tomb keeper was. Now, the tomb keeper finally appeared. However, he was none other than the traitor of the Qin clan, Qin Yuanfeng. Qin Zheng's wife stared at Qin Yuanfeng. Her heart was still pounding. She didn't dare to believe, nor was she willing to believe. When Qin Yuanfeng was young, he once loved her and treated her like a goddess. However, she completely disdained him and chose Qin Zheng. After that, she acted against Qin Yuanfeng and even killed him. Although Qin Yuanfeng proved how strong he was, his fate was still determined. She had never doubted herself before. But now, in the heaven vault, the existence she looked up to, an unreachable existence, was actually the person who once loved her and was now the enemy of the Qin clan. And the woman her son fell in love with was actually Qin Yuanfeng's daughter. What was even more terrifying was that regardless of Qin Wentian or Qin Kersen, both of them already had the strength to fight against Qin Zheng. Qin Zheng's son and daughter were already so powerful to this extent. One could very well imagine what she was feeling right now. The people of the Qin clan were also in a daze as they stared at the figure in the air. Before this, they have already heard of how the deity-level battle in the heaven vault ended. The tomb keeper of the divine mausoleum transformed into his Tao and descended, suppressing the starry space. At that time, they only felt that the tomb keeper was an unreachable existence, a character at the peak of the supreme ancient immortal realms. Now, the unreachable character they felt was actually a traitor of their Qin clan. Was this ridiculous? The traitor of the Qin clan reached the peak of the supreme ancient immortal realms. Just by transforming into his Tao, he wanted to expel the deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms. Was this ridiculous? When one's cultivation base reached such a level, it was no longer important if one was a traitor or not. Qin Dang Tian alone was enough to contend against the entire Qin clan. He could directly establish another Qin clan. Was there any meaning to the name of a traitor? Back then, Qin Tiangang used his supreme talent to traverse through time and space to suppress the Qin clan, exiling Qin Ding. At that time, the hearts of the people of the Qin clan wavered. They wondered if everything they did to Qin Yuanfeng was right or wrong. This time, Qin Yuanfeng returned. Between him and Qin Zheng, there was no longer a need to discuss who was stronger or weaker. Time finally gave them the answer. In addition to Qin Wentian and Qin Kursan, their family of 3 generations was extremely powerful. This originally belonged to the Qin clan, but what about now? Why did Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Wentian lead the heavenly deity army here? How could the people of the Qin clan not understand? I, the traitor of the Qin clan, Qin Yuanfeng, have returned. Qin Yuanfeng stared at the clan before him. In his heart, there was no longer a trace of emotion. This clan had once killed him and seized everything from his body. This was extremely cruel. Was this how they treated their own clansmen? It was more like he was dealing with an irreconcilable enemy. His clan dealt with the Luotian clan, crippling Luotianyu. His clan hunted down his son, wanting to do the same thing they did to him, wanting to deal with his son, Qin Wentian. Such a clan, how could he still have any emotions? Even if he was a saint, it was impossible. At this moment, there was only coldness in his heart. The Qin clan owes me and my son everything. Now, how should we repay them? Qin Yuanfeng coldly spoke. He stepped out and walked forward. Below, many heavenly deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms were present. But who would dare to block him? Yuanfeng, everything that happened in the past has already passed for so many years. Why are you still unwilling to forget it? You didn't die and have grown even stronger. Your son, Qin Wentian, also has outstanding talent. Everything is so perfect. Why don't you let bygones be bygones? After all, the blood of the Qin clan flows in your veins. At this moment, an extremely experienced heavenly deity from the Qin clan spoke, trying to persuade Qin Yuanfeng to give up his hatred. Upon hearing his words, Qin Wentian and the others were all stunned. Jun Mengchen stood beside Qin Wentian and angrily berated, "Old undying thing, there's actually someone as shameless as you in this world. When you killed others, you seized their flesh and blood, even doing such a cruel thing. At that time, have you ever thought about the fact that the blood of the Qin clan flows in his veins? When you guys hunted down my senior brother, you spared no expense and used all sorts of methods. At that time, have you ever thought about the fact that the blood of the Qin clan flows in his veins? Do you still want face? If it wasn't for Master's absolute strength, these people would most probably have the same expression on their faces. How disgusting." An old man who followed Qin Yuanfeng felt a deep sense of disgust. How shameless could this person be? Only then would he be able to say such words. Everything is in the past now. If it wasn't for the fact that they knew Qin Yuanfeng was the tomb keeper, if the tomb keeper didn't display such overwhelming strength, would they say that it was in the past? Most probably, they would kill Qin Yuanfeng and kill Qin Wentian. Qin Yuanfeng didn't say anything. He stepped out. "Qin Yuanfeng, what do you want to do?" Another old man asked. "Could it be that you want to destroy the Qin clan that raised you? The clansmen here all have the same blood as you. Do you want to kill them all? When you guys killed my father, where were my clansmen?" Qin Wentian walked out as he angrily berated. The Qin clan actually dared to do such a heartless thing. Those with a conscience most probably wouldn't have stayed behind. Was there anyone who pitied the Qin clan? In their eyes, there was only the revival of the Qin clan. Because, this concerned their fate. Now, they wanted to play the sympathy card? Did they want to make his father's heart soften and spare the Qin clan? Father, a debt of blood must be repaid with blood. Qin Wendian coldly spoke. If they were weak, it was him. If they were strong, would it be possible for them to do so? I won't implicate the innocent, nor will I spare a single person. Back then, the Qin clan decided to kill me. This was a decision made by the heavenly deities of the Qin clan. You guys keep saying that you are doing this for the sake of the Qin clan. In that case, all of you better step out and commit suicide, paying for your sins. Qin Yuanfeng spoke. The experts of the Qin clan all felt their hearts trembling. Was it possible for the heavenly deities to commit suicide? Heavenly deities were existences at the peak of a power. If the Qin clan didn't have any heavenly deities, would it still be the Qin clan? What was the difference between them and an ordinary clan? In addition, those lofty heavenly deities had already reached the peak. Would they be willing to give up their lives? Is there no one who would step out to pay for this debt? Qin Yuanfeng stared at the experts of the Qin clan. What you guys care about is ultimately your own life and death. What a joke. Qin Zheng. Qin Yuanfeng lowered his head, staring at Qin Zheng in disdain. Qin Zheng's expression turned ashen. He inclined his head and stared at Qin Yuanfeng. This was once his clan brother. Right now, Qin Yuanfeng's cultivation base had already far surpassed his. This feeling was extremely helpless. Back then, how did I treat you? How did you treat me back then? Now, as the Qin clan leader, you even mobilized the Qin clan's heavenly deities to hunt down my son Wentian. Now that we, father and son, are here, it's time for you to step out. Qin Yuanfeng spoke, wanting Qin Zheng to step out. However, did Qin Zheng dare to do so? What was the use of him stepping out? Could he deal with Qin Yuanfeng? He couldn't even suppress Qin Yuanfeng's daughter, Qin Kursen. He only had a slight advantage and he had to rely on the judgment halberd. Everyone, if the Qin clan is destroyed, which of the hegemonic powers in the supreme ancient immortal realms would be able to escape? Qin Zheng spoke, wanting to mobilize the experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms to join the battle. It was basically impossible for the Qin clan to deal with the Qin clan alone. Today, the grudge between me, Qin Yuanfeng, and the Qin clan shall be settled. Since you all are here, just take a look. If anyone dares to interfere, I will kill them. Qin Yuanfeng's calm voice contained an incomparably tyrannical aura. Whoever dares to interfere, he would kill them. Today, this was a matter between him and the Qin clan. This debt would be repaid today. Qin Zheng, act like a man. Qin Yuanfeng stood in the air, waiting for Qin Zheng. Today, there was no way for Qin Zheng to avoid this battle. Even if he didn't want to fight, he had to fight. Qin Zheng slowly soared up into the air. His wife stared at him, a look of sorrow could be seen in her eyes. Fight? In the heaven vault, Qin Yuanfeng transformed into his Tao and appeared. At that time, the strength he displayed already made everyone understand that Qin Zheng was definitely not a match for him. He might even be suppressed. Let's kill them together. Qin Dangtian spoke. A fearsome divine might radiated from him. The heavenly deities of the Qin clan flashed as they stepped out at the same time. They had no choice. Qin Yuanfeng wouldn't spare any of the heavenly deities of the Qin clan. Today, even if they didn't want to fight, they had to fight. Qin Wentian stepped out when he saw this scene. The heavenly deities behind him also stepped out. Competing in numbers. The heavenly deities of the Qin heavenly divine sect might have a certain disparity when compared to the hegemonic powers in the supreme ancient immortal realms, but they would definitely be able to suppress any power. The Qin clan was no exception. Back then, the heavenly deities of the Qin clan ganged up on me to kill me. Now, things are the same as back then. Wentian, help your father to hold the line. Qin Yuanfeng spoke. He stepped out and entered the Qin clan, standing in the middle of the heavenly deities of the Qin clan. Today was so similar to the past. But the him now was no longer the him of the past. Right. Qin Wentian nodded. He waved his hand and the heavenly deities scattered, surrounding the entire Qin clan. Not even a single drop of water could leak out. Everything they did to his father in the past, they would all be repaid today. Not a single one of them was allowed to leave. Chapter 1990. Qin Yuanfeng stood in the center of the heavenly deities, calm and composed. He was like a supreme god king, peering down at the heavenly deities. Qin Zheng stared at this clan brother who grew up together with him. This clan brother of his who was ostracized by him yet had outstanding talent. His eyes flashed with an intense killing intent. However, he knew that the cultivation base of this clan brother of his was already higher than him. He stood there like an undefeatable god king. Make your move. Qin Yuanfeng calmly spoke as he stared at this familiar scene. As the sound of his voice faded, a divine punishment formation appeared in the air, instantly locking down the area. The projection landed on Qin Yuanfeng as the power of divine punishment blasted towards Qin Yuanfeng. The projection of the divine formation on Qin Yuanfeng was so powerful that the light of destruction was so blinding that it hurt the eyes of those who saw it. Around Qin Yuanfeng, a towering devil might gushed forth, suppressing the heavens and earth. Around him, 6 beams of light flashed, transforming into 6 vortexes. His voice was like a supreme devil god, no one would be able to destroy him. When the divine punishment light blasted down, one of the 6 vortexes, the devouring vortex, opened its mouth and directly devoured it, causing the attack to dissipate into nothingness. Force of the 6 paths. The heavenly deities of the Qin clan felt their hearts trembling. Qin Yuanfeng had cultivated the force of the 6 paths. Who would be able to do anything to him? Also, these 6 paths were the Taoists he comprehended himself. Hence, this force of the 6 paths could be said to be something he created himself. How heaven-defying was this? Kill! The heavenly deities felt fear in their hearts. They had no choice but to act. Qin Yuanfeng and his son came here to collect their debt. Qin Yuanfeng fought against the heavenly deities of the Qin clan while Qin Wentian led the army of deities from the Qin heavenly divine sect to suppress them. There was no place for them to flee. Only by fighting would they have a chance of survival. All sorts of Dao arts blasted into Qin Yuanfeng. The 6 vortexes around him grew even more terrifying as they extended out from his feet. There were 6 petals on the flower and each petal was a Dao. These 6 petals gleamed with a strange blackness, dark and terrifying, like the flower of death. These 6 petals revolved around Qin Yuanfeng's body. All sorts of Dao arts and innate techniques blasted into it, yet they were unable to do anything to it. Such defensive power caused the heavenly deities of the Qin clan to feel despair. It also caused the heavenly deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms to feel an intense pressure. They were thinking, what should they do? After Qin Yuanfeng dealt with the Qin clan, would he deal with them? It was true that they had no grudge with Qin Yuanfeng, but they had participated in the assassination of Qin Wentian many times. Would Qin Yuanfeng spare them? At this moment, many powers felt regret. The Western Paradise actually didn't appear at this moment. They were the only power that could stop Qin Yuanfeng, but they still didn't show up. This showed that they had ulterior motives. As expected, there were no powers that could be trusted. Staring at the pitch-black petals around Qin Yuanfeng, as well as his supreme figure, all of them had a feeling that the Qin clan was finished. How foolish was the Qin clan! Such an expert was actually chased out of the clan and even killed by them. However, Qin Wentian actually managed to survive. Such a weak and small Qin clan, yet you want to kill your own clansmen and chase after my son? How lamentable! Qin Yuanfeng sighed, causing the heavenly deities of the Qin clan to feel extremely humiliated. They were humiliated, they were so weak. The 6 petals bloomed ferociously, extending up into the sky. They transformed into the boundless 6 paths of hell, enveloping the entire sky. As they expanded, they unceasingly tore apart the Tao energy of the Qin clan's experts, causing the Qin clan's heavenly deities to retreat unceasingly as a sense of helplessness appeared in their hearts. Qin Yuanfeng's strength had already far surpassed them. At this moment, Qin Yuanfeng stretched his hand out. In an instant, one of the 6 petals unleashed a terrifying devouring vortex that shot towards a heavenly deity. The devouring vortex grew larger and larger, engulfing everything. That Qin clan's heavenly deity violently retreated. However, the entire sky seemed to be about to be devoured by the black petals. There was no way for him to escape. Qin Yuanfeng, you dare to kill your elders? How disgraceful! That heavenly deity howled in rage. Qin Yuanfeng's expression was cold, he didn't waver at all. Kill his elders? Are you guys even worthy? Qin Yuanfeng calmly spoke. How would he show any mercy? The black petals directly devoured that heavenly deity. A miserable scream rang out, reverberating through the vast space of the Qin clan. Everyone in the Qin clan felt their hearts trembling. Regardless of the heavenly deities in combat or the people of the Qin clan, they were all experts. The heavenly deities of the Qin clan couldn't even withstand a single strike from this so-called traitor of the Qin clan. They were all killed in a domineering manner. All of them felt despair. Who among them could deal with Qin Yuanfeng? Vile beast! A heavenly deity roared, unleashing boundless Tao energy towards the black petals. However, the black petals before him shone with the light of samsara, directly engulfing his Tao energy. After that, his body was engulfed as well, being sucked into the samsara petals, entering the endless cycle of samsara. Below, Qin Dangtian let out a low-sounding roar. Divine might towered up into the sky, wanting to soar into the air. However, a hand held him back. Qin Dangtian turned his head, his hands gleamed with a bloodthirsty light as he stared at his mother. Dang just flee. Qin Dangtian's mother transmitted her voice to him. Your talent is outstanding, you are the only one who has a chance to defeat him. Just flee and come back for revenge in the future. She could also sense that in this place, there was no one who could defeat Qin Yuanfeng. Even Qin Dangtian, who obtained the inheritance from the divine mausoleum, wouldn't be able to do so. After all, he hasn't cultivated for long. Even if he obtained the inheritance, he wouldn't be able to instantly surpass himself by too much. He sparred with Qin Zheng before and was already no weaker than his father Qin Zheng. But if he wanted to do what Qin Yuanfeng did, it was basically impossible for him to ignore Qin Yuanfeng. If Qin Dangtian participated in the battle, the ending wouldn't be any different. He wouldn't be able to affect the overall situation. Hence, she hoped that her only son would be able to flee. Mother. Qin Dangtian's eyes flashed with blood. He was filled with reluctance. Why did things turn out like this? He obtained the inheritance from the divine mausoleum and returned in high spirits. He was much stronger than before. He initially thought that he would be able to wash away the humiliation he suffered and chase after the beauty. But what was the truth? What awaited him was actually an even greater calamity. Right now, he could only flee, dragging out an ignoble existence. His father and the other heavenly deities of the Qin clan actually had to fight. Also, this was a battle that they couldn't win. In fact, it could be said that they were courting death. Boom! A thunderous boom rang out. Another heavenly deity of the Qin clan was killed. His body slammed into a majestic building of the Qin clan, causing the building to collapse. The people of the Qin clan glanced over. What they saw wasn't just the collapse of a building, it was more like the collapse of the entire Qin clan. If it could be said that Qin Tiangong's earlier return to vent his anger was to take revenge against the Qin clan, then this time around, Qin Yuanfeng's return might be to annihilate the Qin clan. Inclining their heads and staring at that god-king-like supreme expert, the people of the Qin clan truly felt regret. Intense regret appeared in their hearts. Such a powerful existence, an invincible character, he was originally someone from the Qin clan. Why did the Qin clan chase him away step by step and even wanted to kill him? Originally, this supreme expert should have led the Qin clan to contend for supremacy in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Other than him, his children, Qin Wendian and Qin Kursin, were both so outstanding and so powerful. But now, they actually became the enemies of the Qin clan. Who was at fault for all of this? Who was the one who made the decision back then? It was Qin Ding and Qin Zheng. But now, Qin Ding was exiled and Qin Zheng himself wasn't a match for Qin Yuanfeng. How ironic was this? Maybe it was really like what Qin Wendian said back then. Qin Ding and Qin Zheng were jealous of Qin Yuanfeng's strength. Qin Ding and Qin Zheng were inferior to Qin Yuanfeng, this was why they rejected him. In fact, they even forced him into a dead end and slaughtered his way into the Qin clan. If not, why would Qin Yuanfeng still slaughter his way into the Qin clan back then despite knowing that he would die for sure? But now, everything was already destined. What else could they do? If time could flow in reverse, they would definitely not allow all of this to happen. But in this world, there were no ifs. Arg! Another scream of misery rang out. Another heavenly deity from the Qin clan was killed on the spot. The petals of darkness directly tore his body apart. Qin Yuanfeng didn't show any mercy at all. He has experienced so much and has long since forgotten the meaning of mercy. If the Qin clan showed him a little bit of mercy back then, if they showed him a little bit of mercy, he might have wavered. But the Qin clan didn't. After he was killed, the Qin clan crippled Luo Shenyu. After his son appeared, he was hunted down by the Qin clan. Now, what else could he do? He could only repay blood with blood. Stop killing. An expert from the Qin clan roared at the air. He prostrated himself on the ground as a look of agony appeared on his face. If this continued, all the heavenly deities of the Qin clan would be wiped out. At that time, would the Qin clan still be the Qin clan? Even if Qin Yuanfeng spared the Qin clan, there would only be a single fate for the Qin clan. Destruction, becoming the dust of history. Qin Yuanfeng, the blood of the Qin clan also flows in your veins. Don't be so ruthless. More and more people from the Qin clan spoke, begging for mercy. They wanted Qin Yuanfeng to show mercy. If this continued, the Qin clan would truly be finished. Qin Wendian stared at the faces of these people. There was no sympathy in his heart at all. He coldly spoke, back then when the Qin clan killed my father and hunted me down, was there a single person who stood out to speak for my father and me? Chapter 1991. The people of the Qin clan were speechless. They had no way to reply to Qin Wendian's words. Back then when the Qin clan killed Qin Yuanfeng, where were the people of the Qin clan? They watched as the heavenly deities of the Qin clan killed the traitor Qin Yuanfeng. When the Qin clan hunted down Qin Wendian, which one of them would speak up for Qin Wendian? No one dared to question the decision of the Qin clan's patriarch. Now, Qin Yuanfeng and his son returned domineeringly, wanting revenge. What qualifications did they have to beg for mercy? Had they ever spared Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Wendian? But even so, they had no way to continue watching as the heavenly deities of the Qin clan were killed. They had no way to watch as the Qin clan walked towards destruction. Qin Yuanfeng is ultimately of the same bloodline. Our ancestor established the Qin clan, he didn't wish for it to be destroyed in a single day, especially when it was destroyed in the hands of a descendant with the Qin clan's bloodline. There were still people who spoke, hoping that Qin Yuanfeng would show mercy. They already understood that no one in the Qin clan would be able to stop Qin Yuanfeng. The him who returned was too powerful, so powerful that he could easily flatten the Qin clan. Just him alone was sufficient. Qin Wendian and the other heavenly deities only needed to watch from the side, providing support. The Qin clan wants to kill us. Could it be that they aren't afraid of destroying the Qin clan's bloodline? Qin Wendian coldly spoke. Qin Yuanfeng glanced at the person who spoke. His expression was calm as he spoke, as long as I exist, the bloodline of my ancestor will exist. The Qin clan's bloodline will continue to be passed down. My clan can be considered a clan. My clan can be considered a clan. Qin Wentian's calm voice contained an incomparably strong self-confidence, causing the people of the Qin clan to be stunned. What spirit was this? The experts of the Qin clan were speechless once again. As long as he existed, the bloodline would exist. The Qin clan would exist. Who could refute this? Let alone his clan, he alone could be considered a clan. Right now, he was currently suppressing the heavenly deities of the Qin clan. Even if the heavenly deities of the Qin clan joined forces, they would only be suppressed and killed. He, Qin Wentian, and Qin Kursin. The three of them could easily destroy the Qin clan. Could it be that their bloodline would be weaker than the bloodline of the Qin clan? It was like this was only a matter of time. Generations after generations, Qin Yuanfeng would be able to establish another Qin clan. In that case, so what if he destroyed the current Qin clan? 6 beams of light filled the sky, enveloping the boundless Qin clan. Those terrifying vortexes had the power to destroy everything. All the heavenly deities of the Qin clan who were still alive were all enveloped by them. In fact, there was no one who could escape from the 6 beams of light. Too strong. The experts from the supreme ancient immortal realms who came to the Qin clan felt their hearts trembling. At the same time, they felt a trace of panic, worried that Qin Yuanfeng's next target would be them. How hateful. Could it be that the Western Paradise was going to stand by the side and watch as the Qin clan was destroyed? When the hegemonic powers of the supreme ancient immortal realms attacked the Heaven Vault, the mastermind behind the scenes was none other than the Western Paradise. However, not only did the Western Paradise fail to deal with Qin Wentian, now that Qin Yuanfeng has returned, they didn't come to help either. Could it be that the Western Paradise is intentionally exhausting the strength of the hegemonic powers of the supreme ancient immortal realms? If this was the case, they would all be in dire straits. Qin Wentian would definitely not spare them. Although they understood this point, they didn't have the courage to help the Qin clan defend against Qin Yuanfeng. Qin Yuanfeng was a truly terrifying character, they didn't know if he had the glory of the ancient god kings. But at the very least, with their current cultivation bases, they could only look up to him in admiration. Qin Zheng was beaten so badly that he couldn't even retaliate. Dang quickly leave. I will cover you. Qin Zheng's wife transmitted her voice to Qin Dangtian. Qin Dangtian's eyes were red as he stared at the battle in the sky. Leave. If he left, he would be a complete coward. His father was fighting while he was fleeing. In addition, even if he wanted to leave, would he really be able to? Leaving aside Qin Yuanfeng's strength, Qin Wentian and the other heavenly deities were still surrounding him. Arg! Another scream of misery rang out. A heavenly deity died. Right now, there were only a few heavenly deities left in the Qin clan. If this continued, the Qin clan would soon be completely annihilated. Qin Yuanfeng, you are actually so heartless. A heavenly deity howled. What welcomed him was only 6 beams of light. A terrifying dimensional vortex tore everything apart, sucking him in before he vanished from sight. He would die for sure. Heartless? The Qin clan treated him so badly in the past. Now, they actually said that he was heartless. Despicable, cold-blooded, cruel. Such a Qin clan isn't worthy to continue existing. In the future, the Qin clan will only grow stronger in the hands of my son. There will naturally be a stronger Qin clan in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Qin Yuanfeng's voice was as calm as ever. As the sound of his voice faded, the slaughter continued. More and more heavenly deities died. Finally, other than Qin Zheng's wife and Qin Dangtian who didn't participate in the battle, there was only one person left standing in the air. The Qin clan leader, Qin Zheng. Other than Qin Zheng, all the other heavenly deities of the Qin clan were killed by Qin Yuanfeng. The Qin Yuanfeng who returned didn't hesitate at all. Slaughter, revenge. How did the Qin clan kill him back then? If the hatred between them faded after so many years, what about the Qin clan's pursuit of his son, Qin Wentian? The Qin clan was unforgivable. Just like what he said, such a cold-blooded and cruel Qin clan wasn't worthy to exist. At this moment, Qin Zheng stood before Qin Yuanfeng. He wielded the judgment halberd in his hand and his long hair was disheveled, looking extremely miserable. He didn't have the transcendent bearing of the Qin clan leader at all. He stared at Qin Yuanfeng, his younger clan brother. He didn't beg for mercy because he knew it was useless. Even if Qin Yuanfeng spared everyone, it was impossible for him to spare him. He was very clear about this point in his heart. Back then, he did everything he could to deal with Qin Yuanfeng. Other than because of the treasures Qin Yuanfeng obtained, there was also a hint of jealousy in his heart. Back then, after this younger clan brother of his rose up, he started to display talent that wasn't inferior to him. At that time, he was already selected to be the next clan leader of the Qin clan. How could he allow someone more outstanding than him to appear in the Qin clan? If that happened, his position in the Qin clan would be threatened. Everyone had their own selfish motives. He and his father Qin Ding were naturally no exception. They needed to control the Qin clan and in truth, they had already accomplished it. The Qin clan had always been under their control. As the Qin clan leader, he was incomparably awe-inspiring in the supreme ancient immortal realms, enjoying boundless glory. No matter where he went, he would always be the center of attention. When ordinary people looked at him, it was like they were looking at a god. In the entire supreme ancient immortal realms, he was an extremely outstanding character. Until Qin Wendian appeared, everything slowly changed. But even in his wildest dreams, he didn't expect that these changes would be so swift, catching him unprepared. First, Qin Wendian rose up domineeringly, stepping into the deity realm, joining forces with the Qiankuan sect, Nine Heavens Mystical Palace, Demon God Mountain, and many other powers. After that, Qin Tiangang returned, traversing through time and space to do battle, exiling his father Qin Ding. Until today, Qin Yuanfeng also returned. Qin Yuanfeng, who became the tomb keeper of the divine mausoleum, returned in an invincible manner, staring down at him, the clan leader of the Qin clan. The so-called authority and status of the clan leader, in front of absolute strength, were so weak. They basically couldn't even withstand a single strike. Is this what you wanted to see? Qin Zhen glanced at the heavenly deities of the Qin clan who had disappeared as he felt some despair. Do you have any last words? Qin Yuanfeng calmly asked. His voice was as calm as ever. This sentence of his was like announcing Qin Zheng's death sentence. The words he was about to say would be his final words, his last words. Qin Zheng stared at Qin Yuanfeng and suddenly laughed. Qin Zheng stared at Qin Yuanfeng as he suddenly laughed. He inclined his head and stared at the sky. I have nothing to say about my defeat today. I've never regretted the things that happened in the past. Back then, I killed you, and from then on, no one in the Qin clan would be able to threaten my position. I'm the Qin clan king, and now, you have returned for revenge. I'm inferior to you, and no matter what you say, it's all right. I only have one request from you. Mor, although she has let you down, you were once in love with her. Can you spare her? Qin Zheng didn't expect that before he died, he would actually beg for mercy for his wife. This caused him to be taken aback. As for his wife, her beautiful eyes flashed. She inclined her head and stared at the disheveled shadow in the air. Her silhouette flashed as she appeared in the air. Her beauty was shocking. She and Qin Zheng had always been a couple that everyone in the world envied. Regardless of her talent or beauty, they were all at the peak of the supreme ancient immortal realms. She also didn't regret it. Back then, following Qin Zheng was her choice, and it was undoubtedly the correct choice. Everything that happened later proved that her choice was incomparably correct. It's just that now, Qin Yuanfeng's return caused everything to change. The matters of the world were unpredictable. Who would be able to predict the future? Qin Yuanfeng stared at her. Luoxin Qianxue also stared at her. Seeing that Qin Yuanfeng didn't say anything, she calmly spoke, I can't. Qin Zheng's expression froze as he stared at Luoxin Qianxue. Luoxin Qianxue didn't say a word to explain. She simply stood there calmly, exuding magnificence. That sentence was her attitude. The Qin clan wanted to deal with her husband, Qin Yuanfeng. Did this woman not participate? She understood her very well and knew what sort of person she was. All of this could be forgotten just like that. The Qin clan killed her husband, hunted down her son, crippled her elder brother, causing the Luotian clan to split apart and almost be annihilated. Did she not have a part in all of this? Could it be that she was going to forget all of this? When Qin Yuanfeng heard his wife's words, he didn't say anything. He only stared at Qin Zheng. Since Luotian Qianxue has spoken, this was his standpoint. Luotian Qianxue was his woman. Qin Zheng's wife suddenly laughed. She stared at Qin Zheng. If you die, what's the point of me living alone? We didn't do anything wrong, it's just that this is heaven's will. Fate plays tricks on people. After speaking, she walked to Qin Zheng's side and held his hand. They didn't beg Qin Yuanfeng to spare their son because they knew it was impossible. Since this is the case, I have one last request. Your son Qin Wentian has unparalleled talent and is known as the strongest genius in the supreme ancient immortal realms. My son Dang Tian has supreme talent and is known as Heaven's Son. In the past, they fought twice and both won and lost. Today, can you let the two of them fight for real? Qin Zheng stared at Qin Yuanfeng as he spoke. Even before death, he still wanted to see that his son Qin Dang Tian wouldn't be any weaker than Qin Yuanfeng's son. He hoped that this fate could end with a single battle. Chapter 1992. Qin Zheng already knew what his fate would be. At the moment when his life was about to end, he still felt reluctance in his heart. Compared to Qin Yuanfeng, he was naturally inferior. This was already proven, but he still wasn't willing to admit defeat. Hence, he made such a request. He hoped that his son would be able to fight against Qin Yuanfeng's son, Qin Wentian. This was a battle of destiny. This battle was his hope. If Qin Dangtian was victorious, at the very least, he would feel gratified. Qin Yuanfeng's son was ultimately inferior to his son. He didn't lose so thoroughly. Regardless of Qin Yuanfeng or Qin Wentian, they naturally understood Qin Zheng's intentions. Qin Wentian took a step forward and stared at Qin Zheng. Back then, you were already inferior to my father. However, you used despicable methods to borrow the power of the Qin clan to kill my father. Now, time has finally proven everything. You basically aren't worthy to be mentioned in the same breath as my father. Even before your death, you still want to use such a method to console yourself? In that case, I will grant you your wish and tear apart the last bit of consolation in your heart. As the sound of his voice faded, he turned his gaze to Qin Dangtian. His white robes and black hair fluttered in the wind, exuding a supreme magnificence. In the ruins of the Qin clan, countless people inclined their heads and stared at this incomparably handsome young man. His name was Qin Wentian, a descendant of the Qin clan. Right now, he was known as the #1 genius of the younger generation in the supreme ancient immortal realms, a supreme heavenly deity with the highest talent. Even Heaven's son Qin Dangtian was trampled under his feet. However, this descendant of the Qin clan has long stood in opposition to the Qin clan because of his father. Qin Wentian's actions naturally expressed his attitude. Qin Yuanfeng didn't stop him and calmly watched on. He believed that his son wouldn't be weaker than anyone else. In a situation where he didn't exist, Qin Wentian was able to grow to where he is today. This itself was already a legend, and the legend would continue. His son would definitely surpass him and become an existence at the peak of the supreme ancient immortal realms. When Qin Dangtian saw Qin Wentian's actions, he stepped out and appeared before Qin Wentian. There was no fear in his eyes, only calmness and coldness. Was this a battle of destiny? In this battle, he would prove everything. If I can kill him, will you interfere? Qin Dangtian stared at Qin Yuanfeng as he asked. Yes. Qin Yuanfeng didn't hesitate at all and directly replied. His tyrannical and cold voice directly crushed Qin Dangtian's trace of hope. He naturally would act. Qin Dangtian was his son. In a situation where he had the absolute advantage and could easily kill Qin Dangtian, it was already benevolent of him to allow Qin Wendian to fight against Qin Dangtian. If Qin Dangtian was truly strong enough to kill Qin Wendian, how could he not act? In the face of absolute power, nothing was fair. Back then, how did the Qin clan kill him? How did the Qin clan treat Qin Wendian? Although I will, you are not qualified to kill him. You are not worthy. Qin Yuanfeng calmly spoke. He would naturally act, but this didn't mean that he needed to act. When Qin Dangtian asked, he directly gave the most tyrannical reply. But this didn't mean that he felt that his son was inferior to Qin Dangtian. I understand. Qin Dangtian's silhouette flashed as he soared up into the air. Let's fight. Qin Wendian inclined his head and stepped out. He had already heard from his parents that Qin Dangtian had entered the divine mausoleum for cultivation. He also wanted to know how strong Qin Dangtian had become after entering the divine mausoleum. It was like fate's arrangement. Qin Wendian and Qin Dangtian once again stood on opposite sides. Both of them were so dazzling, unparalleled in the world. The experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms couldn't help but sigh in admiration. The two of them were like Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Zheng of the past, or Qin Tiangang and Qin Ding of the earlier era. However, fate caused them to stand on opposite sides. Releasing his astral souls, Qin Dangtian had always felt that his Tao was the ultimate Tao, able to lead him to the absolute strongest. The terrifying absolute beginning Tao brewed a divine art. Boundless light manifested behind him as a sword intent manifested. In an instant, boundless sword intent manifested in the air. In the starry space, astral light cascaded down as the sky transformed into a world of stars. The daytime vanished, this was a world of stars. His absolute beginning Tao seemed to have replaced the constellations in the sky. He is getting stronger and stronger. Everyone spoke. His absolute beginning Tao could directly transform the constellations in the sky, becoming one with the starry space. This was an evolution of the Tao. Qin Dangtian allowed his absolute beginning Tao to move towards the pinnacle of the great Tao. The Qin Dangtian now was definitely much stronger compared to the past him. The divine mausoleum was truly a wondrous place. Similar to the heaven vault, the ruins of god kings in the supreme ancient immortal realms all contained unimaginable power. The entire world of stars transformed into a divine formation of the great Tao with Qin Dangtian at the center. He was like the god king of the starry space, ruling over the constellations. Kill! Qin Dangtian stretched out his finger. In an instant, millions of beams of sword light rained down from the sky. Millions of strands of sword chi shot towards the location where Qin Wendian was at. This scene was so beautiful that it caused everyone to be stunned. Naturally, it was also so powerful that it caused people to feel despair. This was a grand killing Tao that could exterminate everything. The absolute beginning sword Tao manifested millions of swords, destroying everything. The target of all the swords was Qin Wendian's body. Numerous gazes landed on Qin Wendian. How could Qin Wendian block such an attack? But from what they knew, Qin Wendian's astral souls seemed to be boundless and he could control all sorts of Taos. Even the Western Paradise had no way to trap him. He slaughtered his way into the Western Paradise and 2 Buddha lords died in his hands. There was no need to doubt his strength. Could the current him be weaker than before? A terrifying vortex appeared in Qin Wendian's surroundings. The space around him seemed to be warping as a powerful Tao art was unleashed. Millions upon millions of sword intents instantly gushed over, wanting to engulf him. However, when the sword light neared him, the space around him would distort. It was as though the sword light was being banished to another dimension, before vanishing from sight. Millions upon millions of sword lights and boundless sword chi revolved around Qin Wendian. This scene was too resplendent, but not a single sword could truly pierce into his body. All of them were sent into a different spacetime as though they were exiled by him, vanishing without a trace. His Tao of spacetime has also grown stronger. Everyone sighed in their hearts when they saw this scene. Qin Dangtian was growing, but wasn't Qin Wentian the same as well? He was getting closer to his grandfather. Back then during the battle in the Qin clan, Qin Tiangang traversed through spacetime and returned. He used a heaven-defying spacetime technique to banish Qin Ding, causing Qin Ding to vanish into a chaotic spacetime. Now, Qin Wentian's Tao of spacetime already had a hint of his grandfather's brilliance. He could banish the millions of strands of sword intent, distorting space and time. The boundless killing energy couldn't enter his body. What sort of ability was this? This made everyone understand that right now, even for those hegemonic characters at the peak of the supreme ancient immortal realms, it would be very tough for them to deal with Qin Wentian. For example, Qin Zheng might not be his opponent. As expected, you are stronger than before. Only then are you qualified to fight against me. Qin Dangtian coldly spoke. His eyes were filled with intense confidence. Even if the Qin clan encountered a huge change today and his clan might encounter a calamity, he was still as confident as ever when he fought. Because, he knew very well what sort of changes had happened to him and how strong he was now. Although he wasn't as strong as Qin Yuanfeng who was proficient in the 6 paths, Qin Wentian would definitely not be his opponent. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at Qin Dangtian. He calmly spoke, "Someone who was once defeated by me actually dares to say such words. Don't you feel that this is very ridiculous?" Ridiculous? Qin Dangtian mocked. He didn't feel that it was ridiculous at all. A terrifying divine might bore down on him. Behind Qin Dangtian, boundless starry space manifested, converging bit by bit as an illusory humanoid figure appeared. This figure was imposing and imposing. Although it was blurry, everyone could feel that it was unexcelled in the world. The experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms inclined their heads. Strange looks could be seen in their eyes when they stared at Qin Dangtian. This was. When they thought of the rumors about the divine mausoleum, the hearts of many people pounded. Could it be that Qin Dangtian had really obtained the inheritance of the divine mausoleum? Descend. Qin Dangtian spoke. That incomparably imposing shadow stood tall in the sky, like the Lord of the heavens and earth. It transformed into a protector god that appeared behind Qin Dangtian. At this moment, Qin Dangtian seemed to have received the protection of a god king, inheriting the divine Tao. He was truly the heaven's son, unexcelled in the world. Qin Yuanfeng frowned when he saw this. As expected, he actually had such a heaven-defying ability. He actually borrowed the body of a future inheritor to appear, wanting to return for a battle. However, since everything has already been destroyed, dust to dust, dust to dust. Although he was once the protector of the divine mausoleum, since the ruins have been destroyed, his mission has also ended. If the ancient godly monarch truly returned, he didn't fear a battle. Naturally, he wasn't in a hurry to act. This wasn't a true return. This was a battle between his son and Qin Dangtian. He still believed that his son, Qin Wentian, would be able to win for sure. I'm known as the Heaven's Son and should be destined by fate. In reality, everything that has happened is also proof of fate. It's just regretful that there are always some undefeatable existences in the world that can affect fate. However, the ending of this battle has already been determined by fate. You will lose for sure. Qin Dangtian calmly spoke. His confidence originated from his strength and his inheritance. Chapter 1993. The experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms inclined their heads and stared at the starry sky in the sky. Their hearts trembled. As more and more people in the supreme ancient immortal realms mentioned the god's relic, some ancient rumors began to circulate. It was rumored that the ancient gods were buried in the divine mausoleum, and the person who arranged all of this was a supreme existence, the divine king of the flood region, the moon god. In the 9 heavenly star rivers, the moonlight was the brightest in the starry sky. People called it the moon god because it was the highest form of respect. It was rumored that in that era, the moon god was so powerful that he was able to use the power of the stars in the heavens for his own use. He was able to use the most powerful divine techniques in the world, and had the power to destroy the archaic era. It was rumored that he was only a step away from transcending. Could it be that he had sealed himself in God's relic so that he could return one day? Could that be the divine king? Everyone stared at the blurry figure, wondering if he was borrowing the body of an inheritor to descend. If the God King returned, how would Qin Wentian be able to contend against him? In addition, the body he borrowed was none other than the extremely terrifying Heaven's Son, Qin Dangtian. This scene caused the experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms to waver. Maybe, Qin Dangtian would truly be able to defeat the number one genius of the supreme ancient immortal realms. The people of the Qin clan felt their hearts trembling when they saw this scene. Was this the Qin Dangtian who returned from the god's ruins? No wonder the clan leader, Qin Zheng, said that even he wouldn't be able to win against his son Qin Dangtian now. Right now, Heaven's Son has truly obtained the care of a god king and has unfathomable abilities. Sadly, Qin Yuanfeng came and didn't give him enough time to grow. If not, the Qin clan might be able to survive this calamity and become a hegemonic power of the supreme ancient immortal realms, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Western Paradise. Just like what Qin Dangtian said, fate had determined that he would be the Heaven's Son. However, there would always be some irresistible factors in the world that would affect his destiny. Qin Dangtian obtained the God King's inheritance and coincidentally, Qin Yuanfeng of the Qin clan was the guardian of the ancient god ruins. Could it be that this wasn't fate? Right now, the only thing they could do was to admire this battle. The Qin clan, these two supreme geniuses who had a grudge against each other, were destined to fight. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the sky. The boundless constellations manifested the shadow of a god king. In the air, the most resplendent starlight transformed into a pair of eyes, the eyes of the moon god. It was rumored that in ancient times, the moon god's eye had the power to destroy everything in the world. Right now, how strong would Qin Dangtian be? Qin Wentian soared up into the starry space. A powerful divine might gushed forth from him as a storm of time and space gathered around him. With a wave of his hand, a spacetime sword intent that could lacerate everything pierced through space, directly appearing around Qin Wentian. The sword intent transformed into a sword Dao that could lacerate spacetime as a terrifying beam of sword light flashed in the starry space. Behind Qin Dangtian, in the air above the gigantic shadow world, boundless starry space manifesting an extremely powerful moon that was like a divine formation. Its light enveloped Qin Dangtian's body, and when the spacetime sword attack shot over, it actually dissipated, transforming into nothingness as though it had never appeared before. That beam of light seemed to contain the might of Dao annihilation, able to destroy all heavenly Dao energy. It was like a supreme divine might that could dominate everything. Qin Wentian furrowed his brows and continued to try different Dao arts. However, under the protection of the illusory figure, the moon divine formation could destroy all Dao arts and divine arts. None of them could land on Qin Dangtian. All the heavenly Dao attacks seemed to have lost their ability to attack. Dao annihilation. Everyone sighed in admiration. Was this the ability of a god king? It was too powerful. Qin Dangtian's inheritance could actually borrow his body to unleash such power. This was simply unbelievable. The methods of a god king were unfathomable. Give me some more time. Even your father Qin Yuanfeng wouldn't be my opponent, let alone you. Qin Dangtian's voice was filled with arrogance. Although this might be his final battle, he wouldn't lose his pride. This was a battle that belonged to him. In this battle, he would unleash his most dazzling radiance. He was extremely confident because his inheritance was the inheritance of a god king. Even Qin Yuanfeng was merely a protector of it. Borrowing the power of an ancient god? Where does your pride come from? If it's just you, you wouldn't even have the qualifications to be my opponent. Qin Wentian's voice was calm. He floated in the air and stared at Qin Dangtian. Make your move. Let me see how strong the power of a god king's inheritance is. He has never seen an ancient god king before. Up until now, there might only be a single ancient god king left in this world. That existence was none other than that existence in the Western paradise. That existence would definitely be his greatest enemy. Because, he wanted to truly sense how powerful an ancient god king was. He wanted to know if his father and the crazy old freak had also reached this level or not. If they hadn't, how great would the disparity be? Ridiculous. Could it be that you didn't borrow the inheritance of others for your current accomplishments? Since it's in my body, it naturally belongs to me. His heart didn't waver at all. He stared at Qin Wentian and spoke, Moon God's eyes. As the sound of his voice rang out, in the boundless starry space, the resplendent Moon God's eyes radiated two beams of light. These two beams of light engulfed everything, instantly enveloping Qin Wentian. At this instant, Qin Wentian only felt that he had come to another world, the world of the Moon God's eyes. In here, he seemed to have lost all his strength and was like an ordinary mortal. Before him, an incomparably majestic god like a god king stood there. Just a single glance from this god was enough to make him prostrate on the ground. Kneel. The voice of a god rang out, reverberating through Qin Wentian's mind, causing him to have an impulse to kneel. His will was greatly shaken. Frowning, Qin Wentian resolutely stared at the figure before him. He was also a heavenly deity. Even if a true god king returned, he wouldn't be qualified to make him kneel. He wouldn't kneel. Blaspheme the god king. A cold voice rang out. As the sound of this voice faded, a supreme divine weapon shot over. It was like the weapon of a god king, capable of annihilating everything, unstoppable. Qin Wentian unleashed his heavenly Tao to defend. A spatial storm manifested, wanting to expel the divine weapon. However, when the divine weapon pierced through, his Tao was directly destroyed. He was so weak that he couldn't even withstand a single strike. The divine weapon pierced through his body, causing intense pain. Qin Wentian lowered his head and stared at his chest. The divine weapon pierced through his body as fresh blood flowed out. What ability is this? Qin Wentian silently mused. Under the envelopment of the Moon God's eyes, he was like an ordinary mortal, unable to withstand a single strike. His body was easily pierced through. If this was the case, how could he fight against Qin Wentian? His attacks couldn't even shake his opponent. His defense was also useless. How could he fight against Qin Wentian? Illusion. Qin Wentian spoke. He inclined his head and stared at the starry space. This must be the power of the illusionary heavenly Tao. The Moon God's eyes brought him into the illusion world with a single glance, affecting him. In this illusion world, his strength was greatly weakened. The power of the heavenly Tao couldn't even withstand a single strike. He was like an ordinary mortal facing a heavenly deity, he had no way to resist and could only die. His will was strong, he wanted to struggle free from the illusion. However, he discovered that this heaven-defying illusion was no different from reality. There were no flaws at all. For a true heaven-defying illusion Tao, the illusion was reality, the truth was also the illusion. Reality and illusions were a single entity. Borrowing the power of the starry space to form a supreme illusion art, how powerful was the Moon God's eyes? Most probably, only the people of that era would know of this. How can you fight against me? At this moment, a voice drifted over. Qin Wentian stared ahead. Under the moonlight, a supreme figure appeared. It was none other than Qin Wentian. The Qin Wentian now was like a true god king. Did the god king borrow his power to fight against him or did he transform into a god king? Kill! A cold voice rang out. Another supreme divine weapon penetrated through everything. Qin Wentian's expression was like ice as he spoke, time freeze. In the surroundings, time and space seemed to be about to stop. However, when the supreme divine weapon penetrated through, the time freeze Tao directly shattered. That divine weapon appeared once again, piercing through his body. Qin Wentian's chest was pierced through again as fresh blood flowed unceasingly, dyeing his robes red. He was in an extremely miserable state. Such a battle seemed to have no suspense at all. As long as Qin Wentian couldn't break this Tao, Qin Wentian was invincible. At this moment, outside the illusion Dao, Qin Yuanfeng and the others inclined their heads and stared at the scene in the air. They saw Qin Wentian's body being pierced through as fresh blood flowed. Elder brother. Luo Shenlei's beautiful eyes froze, feeling very worried. Even Luo Shen Qianxue also felt some worry as she stared at the sky. Only Qin Yuanfeng's expression was as calm as before. He had a deeper understanding of the legends of the ancient era. He knew how terrifying the moon god was. In that era, the moon god's eyes could envelop all living beings in the world with a single glance, causing everyone to sink into a supreme illusion, unable to extricate themselves. He could use the constellations in the sky to form the moon god's eyes. Once he activated this divine art, no one in the world would be able to escape. Right now, Qin Wentian had inherited his ability. He was naturally powerful, but it was impossible for him to be compared to a supreme god king of the ancient era. He didn't act. This was something Qin Wentian had to experience. In the future, he might have to face a true god king. A god king borrowed Qin Wentian's body to fight against him. To Qin Wentian, this was a kind of challenge. He had to subdue him. The road ahead was long. If he wanted to ask the heavens who would be the ruler of the world, he had to do things that others couldn't. He has already deciphered the secret of the heaven vault. He believed that his son Qin Wentian would definitely be an existence that transcended fate, standing above the 9 heavenly layers. Chapter 1994. It's useless to struggle. In the air, Qin Dangtian seemed to have transformed into a god king, unexcelled in the world. His eyes stared at Qin Wentian as he coldly spoke, "As long as you are in this spacetime, you will never be able to escape from my Dao attack. You have already lost. I am the true heaven's son, the number one in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Your Dao attack." Qin Wentian stared at the silhouette in the air as he asked, "Is this really a Dao art of yours?" This was the Dao of a god king. Qin Dangtian was merely the inheritor, and he most probably wouldn't be able to digest this inheritance. This was already different from ordinary inheritances. Qin Dangtian borrowed his body to return to battle. Although Qin Wentian didn't know what the consequences would be, he knew that even if Qin Dangtian didn't die today, he wouldn't have a good ending either. The moon god had planned this for countless years, burying himself in the divine mausoleum. How could it be so simple as to find a successor? Now, this is a power that belongs to me. This is naturally my Dao, Qin Dangtian arrogantly replied. Qin Wentian, you are no longer qualified to be my opponent. Go to hell. As the sound of his voice faded, many supreme divine weapons manifested in the air, all of them wanting to kill Qin Wentian. Below, countless people stared at the battle in the air. Qin Wentian was in danger. Would Qin Yuanfeng act? However, at this moment, Qin Wentian closed his eyes. The flow of time around him seemed to have changed. Time flowed very slowly. You are right. As long as I am in this spacetime, I won't be able to escape from this illusion. This illusion is the Tao of spacetime, borrowing the power of the constellations in the sky to descend. If I want to break this Tao, I have to leave this spacetime. Qin Wentian spoke. Under the sky, in the starry space, no matter which spacetime you are in, it's the same. Qin Dangtian's voice was cold. A supreme divine weapon slashed out, wanting to take Qin Wentian's life. You're right. However, how can there be an invincible Dao technique in this world? No matter how powerful the illusion Dao is, it is only activated by borrowing the power of the stars in the sky. Qin Wentian calmly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, the 9th astral gate in his sea of consciousness shone with a dazzling light. At this moment, beams of astral light cascaded down from the 9 heavens. Instantly, Qin Wentian was bathed in the boundless starry sky, resplendent to the extreme. The hearts of everyone trembled violently when they saw this scene. Boundless astral light cascaded down from the 9 heavenly layers, originating from different constellations. It was as though the astral energy from the 9 heavenly layers could be used by him, illuminating his body and the space he was in. The night sky was as resplendent as the day. As the boundless astral light descended, the projection of Tao energy from the starry space seemed to be weakening bit by bit. The night sky that blotted out the sun gradually faded away. Qin Dangtian's countenance changed as he stared at this scene in disbelief. How could this be possible? How could Qin Wendian break the moon god's eye? Borrowing the power of the constellations in the sky. The hearts of the experts below trembled violently. The moon god's eye originally borrowed the power of the starry space to form a spacetime projection, causing the entire world to sink into an illusion. However, Qin Wendian was able to communicate with the constellations in the sky, causing the astral light from the 9 heavenly layers to descend upon him. The illusion was naturally broken by itself. There was no better method to break it than this. However, Qin Wendian could borrow the power of the constellations in the sky. In that case, could it be true that he could communicate with any constellations in the 9 heavenly layers? What terrifying inheritance did he obtain from the heaven vault exactly? Qin Zheng and his wife had unsightly expressions on their faces. It was broken. The powerful moon god's eye, the inheritance from the moon god, was actually broken. What ability did you obtain in the heaven vault? Qin Dangtian stared at Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian didn't reply. He coldly stared at him. If you don't borrow the power of the God King, can your absolute beginning heavenly Tao still fight against me? Behind Qin Dangtian, the God King's shadow could still be seen. There was a pair of terrifying eyes there. However, it was no longer as powerful as before, able to drag Qin Wendian into a heaven-defying illusion with a single glance. Qin Dangtian released his absolute beginning astral soul and frenziedly transformed. In an instant, numerous pairs of eyes appeared in his absolute beginning astral soul. Each pair of eyes resembled the eyes of the moon god. This was the heaven-defying ability of the absolute beginning astral soul. It was like the beginning of all Taos, able to create the strongest and most perfect Tao. Although the moon god's eye was broken, it wasn't that Qin Dangtian didn't have the strength to fight back. Those terrifying eyes stared at Qin Wendian, wanting to imprison Qin Wendian, causing him to sink into the spacetime illusion once again. However, before Qin Wendian, a terrifying storm suddenly manifested, wanting to tear apart everything. Even the spacetime before him was about to shatter. It's time for me to act. Qin Wendian inclined his head and stared at Qin Dangtian. In an instant, that pair of terrifying eyes seemed to be able to cause everything in the world to sink into them. Qin Dangtian only felt the spacetime around him becoming chaotic. He could see that Qin Wendian's body was also distorting. It was extremely terrifying. Before Qin Wendian unleashed his moon god's eye, Qin Wendian had already displayed his extraordinary attainments in the Tao of spacetime. He was much stronger compared to the past. He already had the ability to banish. He could use his Tao to banish the attacks of his opponents into a different spacetime. And now, with every step he took, time and space would distort. Not only so, Qin Dangtian could also sense that the spacetime around him was also distorting. A spacetime storm manifested, wanting to destroy everything. Qin Dangtian's expression turned incredibly unsightly. The absolute beginning astral soul transformed into a spacetime storm. The two storms clashed together, but it only caused the spacetime around him to become even more chaotic. He could sense that the spacetime around him was already in chaos, gradually losing control. Bzz. Qin Dangtian's silhouette flashed. He was like a bolt of lightning, wanting to rush out. But at this moment, he only saw an afterimage. A sword slashed apart spacetime. The distorted space wanted to tear his body apart. Qin Dangtian instantly retreated. He only saw Qin Wendian appearing before him, obstructing him. I will let you be destroyed in this spacetime. Qin Wendian calmly spoke, exuding incomparable confidence. He clearly told Qin Dangtian that he would kill Qin Dangtian in this spacetime storm. Qin Dangtian's expression turned unsightly. He rushed towards another direction, but Qin Wendian's silhouette was like an afterimage, traversing through space and appearing before Qin Dangtian again. He punched out, causing the heavens and earth to rumble. Time and space seemed like it was about to shatter, forcing Qin Dangtian back. The distorted spacetime grew even wider, unceasingly wrapping around Qin Dangtian, wanting to devour him bit by bit. Next, Qin Dangtian unceasingly tried to break through the seal, but he failed every time. He was continuously pushed back by Qin Wentian. The spacetime storm in the sky grew increasingly terrifying, like a huge bloody mouth, wanting to bury Qin Dangtian completely. Dang Qin Zheng's wife called out, a look of worry could be seen in her beautiful eyes. Qin Zheng's countenance turned ashen as well. Has Qin Wentian's attainments in the Tao of spacetime already reached such a level? If this continues on, there would be a day where he would comprehend the ultimate Tao of spacetime. Arg! A scream of misery rang out. The terrifying spacetime storm distorted space, tearing apart one of Qin Dangtian's arms. Fresh blood flowed. Qin Zheng roared in rage and stepped out, moving towards the battlefield. However, a gigantic palm directly appeared, transforming into the power of the six paths. With a thunderous boom, Qin Zheng's body was forced back. Qin Yuanfeng coldly glanced at him. In a battle between the two of them, it was impossible for a father to not care if someone's life was in danger. However, was Qin Zheng even able to care? He basically wasn't a match for Qin Yuanfeng. Qin Wentian. A scream of misery rang out once more, accompanied by roars of rage. That terrifying spacetime storm was already strong enough to bury Qin Dangtian. Today, was Heaven's Son going to die in the Qin clan? The people of the Qin clan all felt an intense sense of sorrow. The experts of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms witnessed everything. They also felt a sense of pressure. Qin Wentian's family was so domineering. From now on, another peak power would appear in the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms, standing above all the other peak powers. Michem. At this moment, Qin Yuanfeng furrowed his brows. After that, a terrifying black fog gushed over from afar. A space-time tunnel seemed to have been opened up as a beam of incomparably dark light directly descended from the sky, projecting itself onto the battlefield. When that beam of light shot into the spacetime storm, the powerful spacetime storm dissipated bit by bit, finally dissipating into nothingness. Qin Dangtian's body appeared, but he was in an extremely miserable state. Qin Wentian frowned, he inclined his head and stared at the spacetime tunnel. Within the tunnel, there was a beam of moonlight, a beam of darkness. This beam of moonlight contained a terrifying Tao intent that could destroy all Taos in the world. Qin Wentian could sense that this energy was similar to the Tao annihilation might Qin Dangtian unleashed earlier. It was just that this beam of moonlight was much stronger. It's you. Qin Yuanfeng stared at the spacetime tunnel, his voice filled with imposingness and coldness. Yu Changkong. Qin Wentian coldly spoke. He naturally recognized the black fog. It was none other than Yu Changkong's ability. The terrifying darkness tunnel directly descended on Qin Dangtian. The black fog enveloped him as a voice drifted over, Qin Dangtian, the God King's inheritance you obtained isn't complete. Right now, the Qin clan is destined to cease to exist. If you want revenge, let's merge the inheritance together. Qin Dangtian inclined his head and stared at the dark crescent moon. This was the other half of the moonlight. In addition to the half moon in his inheritance, he would be able to obtain the complete moon god's inheritance. In addition, Yu Changkong's comprehension of the moon god's Tao seemed to have already surpassed him. Qin Dangtian glanced at his parents before coldly glancing at Qin Wentian. His eyes flickered with the flames of hatred. Just like what Yu Changkong has said, the Qin clan would be destroyed. His parents might die. But what about him? Should he choose death or should he choose a different path for revenge? Fine, I will grant you your wish. Qin Dangtian coldly spoke. He no longer resisted the corrosion of the black fog. In an instant, a terrifying wave of darkness energy seized everything from his body. It was like a devouring mouth. Even his soul floated out and was devoured by the black fog. After that, he was dragged away by the black fog and was brought into the space-time tunnel. Chapter 1995. Dang Qin Zheng and his wife called out loudly when they saw this scene. The shadow Qin Dangtian glanced at them and spoke, "Father, Mother, I will definitely return for revenge." "No!" Qin Zheng's wife screamed. However, it was useless. The black fog enveloped Qin Dangtian's soul as he vanished into the dark passageway. Qin Yuanfeng frowned when he saw this scene. He knew who this person was. It was none other than the evil cultivator who entered the divine mausoleum. This person's methods were extremely evil and wanted to devour the divine mausoleum back then. However, the moon god didn't want to be devoured by him and chose Yu Changkong to obtain the other half of the inheritance. Boom! Qin Yuanfeng stepped out and actually walked towards the dark passageway. After that, he lifted his fist and punched out. At this moment, a terrifying storm gushed forth, transforming into 6 fists that could crush everything. The space-time passageway trembled unceasingly as rumbling sounds rang out. At the other end of the space-time passageway, a groan of misery could be heard. After that, an evil laughter rang out. "Tomb Keeper, wait for me. You two father and son will also become my nourishment." That evil voice echoed through the air. The space-time passageway trembled and closed. The chaotic air currents gradually calmed down. Finally, everything seemed to have come to an end. Qin Dangtian's body fell from the air and was caught by Qin Zheng. He no longer had any signs of life. Heaven's sun has fallen. The experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms inclined their heads. This was an era-defining battle. Heaven's son Qin Dangtian returned from the divine mausoleum. After obtaining the inheritance, he was unexcelled in the world and was incomparably arrogant. However, he was still defeated in the end. Just like what Qin Wentian said, that was the power of the inheritance. In fact, it didn't even belong to him. It was like a battle where a god king returned. His own absolute beginning Tao was extremely weak before Qin Wentian. Hence, after the moon god's eye was broken, Qin Dangtian had no way to contend against Qin Wentian. He was defeated and was brought away by Qin Wentian. Heaven's son died, the Qin clan was about to be annihilated. Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Wentian were like the most dazzling existences of this era. There was no one who could obstruct their sharpness. Maybe, the only existences who could contend against them now were only the Western Paradise and that mysterious evil cultivator Yu Changkong. Now, how could the people of the supreme ancient immortal realm still not understand that this Yu Changkong was no longer the Yu Changkong of the past? Staring at Yu Changkong's vanishing figure, Qin Yuanfeng frowned. The existence of this Yu Changkong would be quite troublesome. Turning his gaze over, he stared at Qin Zheng and his wife. Qin Zheng and his wife also stared back at him, their countenances were cold, filled with the flames of hatred. However, Qin Yuanfeng's heart didn't waver at all. Hatred? What right did they have to hate him? Compared to what they had done to his family, this was nothing. A bright light flashed as the judgment halberd flew out and landed in the air. After that, it actually changed its direction and aimed at Qin Zheng. Everything was over. Inclining his head, Qin Zheng stared at the air as he sighed, "The heavens want me dead, it isn't my fault. This is simply fate playing tricks on people." In this life, how much did he have to pay for his achievements today? Now, everything had turned to dust. His legendary life was about to reach its end. The judgment halberd radiated boundless light, it was like the final ray of light. It trembled in the air as it hummed. In the next instant, the judgment halberd transformed into a beam of light that shot towards Qin Zheng. It was like a bolt of lightning, penetrating through Qin Zheng's body. His body trembled violently, he inclined his head and stared at Qin Yuanfeng. "Yuanfeng, I'm truly inferior to you." As soon as he finished speaking, the might of the great path descended and blasted his body. In an instant, boundless light of divine punishment flowed around his body, and the power of judgment was released together, destroying his physical body and soul. His body gradually became illusory, as if it would disappear at any moment. Before his death, he finally admitted that he was inferior to Qin Yuanfeng. Regardless of himself or his children. Once, he had done all he could to finally capture Qin Yuanfeng and become the Qin clan leader. However, all his schemes were for naught. Not only that, he fell even more miserably. His entire clan was annihilated, no longer existing. When his wife saw this scene, tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. She hugged Qin Zheng's body and similarly, a terrifying Dao might was unleashed, devouring her body. She wanted to destroy her own Dao, destroy her own body, and enter the Yellow Springs together with Qin Zheng. In this life, they had been glorious and glorious. But now, everything was over. Qin Yuanfeng returned for revenge, their son was killed. They no longer had any hope, they only wished for death. This was fate. No matter how glorious they were in the past, how powerful they were, right now, they were no different from ordinary people. The experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms stared at their gradually turning illusory figures as sorrow filled their hearts. So what if they were at the peak of the Tao-seeking realm? If they couldn't step into the supreme peak, they would ultimately be buried in the dust of the mortal world. In this world, who could transcend life and death, living a carefree life, unfettered by anyone? Only those who could transcend the 9 heavens. Since ancient times, has there been anyone who could do this? Maybe, there was. They all silently mused in their hearts. The people of the Qin clan felt even more sorrow. Their clan leader Qin Zheng committed suicide to become the Qin clan leader. The Qin clan's mother followed him and the heavenly deities of the Qin clan were all dead, not a single one was left. This was the price they had to pay for the mistakes they made. This price was too heavy. The mistakes they made in the past were too great, unforgivable. The heavenly deities of the Qin clan joined forces to kill the most outstanding genius of the Qin clan and even took away his body. How cruel was that? Now that Qin Yuanfeng returned for revenge, could they really hate Qin Yuanfeng? What qualifications did they have to hate him? Finally, the bodies of Qin Zheng and his wife dissipated, turning into dust in the wind. The clan leader of the Qin clan and the mother of the Qin clan died just like that, committing suicide in the airspace of the Qin clan to atone for their sins. This grudge ended with a full stop. Qin Yuanfeng stared at the two of them vanishing. In his heart, he didn't feel too much joy from revenge. He was very calm, like he had done something he ought to do. He wouldn't be influenced by hatred, but since it was hatred, he naturally had to repay it. Now, everything has finally ended. Inclining his head and staring at the horizons, Qin Yuanfeng stared at the experts of the Qin clan. There were experts of the Qin clan who knelt down and spoke. The Qin clan has already paid the price for the sins we committed in the past. Qin Zheng has been executed and the heavenly deities of the Qin clan are all dead. Why don't we end the grudges of the past now? You are a heaven chosen of the Qin clan. Now, please return and take control of the Qin clan. The heavenly deities of the Qin clan were all dead. If there were no heavenly deities guarding the Qin clan, even if Qin Yuanfeng died here, the Qin clan would still exist in name. A hegemonic power without any heavenly deities would only be coveted by others and their ending would be extremely miserable. As the sound of this voice faded, many people of the Qin clan knelt down. Please return and take control of the Qin clan. If Qin Yuanfeng returned, the Qin clan would still be the Qin clan. Just like what Qin Yuanfeng said, his clan could be considered a clan. Qin Yuanfeng stared at the figures of the Qin clan, as well as the voices of those who wanted to return and take control of the Qin clan. His heart was like still water and his eyes were as calm as ever. Once, the heavenly deities of the Qin clan wanted to kill me. The Qin clan took advantage of the situation and no one stood out. But today, Qin Zheng has been executed and they want me to take control of the Qin clan. All of these are just a few words, the winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. Qin Yuanfeng calmly spoke, his words causing the hearts of everyone to tremble. Indeed, everything was just a few words, the winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. The experts of the Qin clan took advantage of the situation, there was no right or wrong. The winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. It might be nothing in an empire but in a clan, isn't this a little too heartless? What's the point of a clan like this existing? Qin Yuanfeng sighed. Because of a single sentence from him, the hearts of the people of the Qin clan tensed up once again. Disperse. Seeing that we are of the same bloodline, I will spare you all. But from now onwards, the Qin clan will no longer exist. Qin Yuanfeng waved his hand as he spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, he waved his hand and a moment later, an extremely powerful might bore down on the symbolic buildings of the Qin clan. The might of the heavenly Tao descended, causing the buildings to collapse madly before the eyes of everyone. Turning their heads, they saw the buildings of the Qin clan crumbling into dust. The hearts of the people of the Qin clan were filled with melancholy. They understood that Qin Yuanfeng has long since given up on the Qin clan. From now onwards, the era that belonged to the Qin clan has passed. Countless people of the Qin clan felt melancholy. It's over, everything has ended. Once, as members of the Qin clan, they were filled with boundless glory. But from today onwards, the Qin clan would no longer exist in the supreme ancient immortal realms. The people of the world would only know of the names of Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Wentian. Their names would represent the future of the Qin clan. Once, I fantasized countless times that I would come here and destroy the Qin clan, helping Father to take revenge for the hatred of the past. Who would have thought that today, Father would personally return and settle this grudge? Qin Wentian stood beside Qin Yuanfeng as he spoke in a light voice. He also had many emotions in his heart. Qin Zheng had died. Most probably, Heaven's choice Qin Dangtian had also ended. Even if I didn't return, you would still be standing here one day. The ending wouldn't be any different. Qin Yuanfeng stared at his son as he calmly spoke. The future of the supreme ancient immortal realms ultimately belongs to you. Let's return for now. Right. Qin Wentian nodded. His gaze swept through the air. Those experts of the supreme ancient immortal realms could sense the coldness in Qin Wentian's eyes as their hearts trembled. From Qin Wentian's eyes, they could see a cold killing intent. The Qin clan was destroyed. Most probably, it would be their turn next. Right now, given Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Wentian's strength, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. There was basically no way for them to escape. Right now, Qin Wentian didn't act. Maybe, it was because not all of them arrived. They didn't think that Qin Wentian would be so merciful as to spare them. One must know that not long ago, they even killed their way into the heaven vault. This debt of revenge, Qin Wentian would definitely get it back. Qin Wentian led the heavenly deities back. On the way back, Qin Yuanfeng spoke, "You have to be careful of that person." He entered the divine mausoleum together with Qin Dangtian. According to my conjecture, he should be the reincarnation of an ancient god king. Yu Changkong. Qin Wentian's eyes were cold. I didn't expect that in this era, I would be able to encounter a different god king. For the god kings who once established the 8 great regions in the supreme ancient immortal realms, they either pursued the path of supremacy or died. However, they were filled with reluctance in their hearts and wanted to return. The divine mausoleum was laid out by the moon god for countless years, waiting for the day when he would return. Didn't you see that Qin Dangtian doesn't seem to have inherited the moon god's power? It's more like Qin Dangtian was possessed by the god king's power. The moon god chose Qin Dangtian and not that evil cultivator because Qin Dangtian was easier to control. Qin Yuanfeng slowly spoke. He stared at the sky and continued, "God kings are returning one after another. It's like they want to mark the end of this era, starting a brand new era." Chapter 1996. Up until now, Qin Wentian already had a total of 5 god kings in direct or indirect contact with him. In ancient times, the 8 supreme heavenly deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms established the 8 regions, each ruling over an area. The heaven vault was the inheritance of God King Shi. Back then in the time realm of the mystic region, he once met with the God King of Time. The God King of Time bestowed him the Tao Bone of Time, allowing him to comprehend the Tao of Time. After that, a conflict erupted between him and the Western Paradise, and he learned that there might be a god king in the Western Paradise who was still alive. In addition to the fact that the divine mausoleum was created by a god king, as well as Yu Changkong's previous incarnation, 5 out of the 8 ancient god kings had appeared. This was extremely unusual. It seemed to have the meaning of epoch making. Just like what Qin Yuanfeng said, maybe the 8 god kings would appear in their ruins or reincarnate, marking the end of their era. In that case, in this brand new era, who would be the one to control it? The Qin clan leader Qin Zheng and his wife committed suicide. Qin Dangtian was devoured by Yu Changkong. This news instantly swept through the supreme ancient immortal realms, causing a huge commotion. Another hegemonic power was destroyed. The Qin clan of the Heaven region, how powerful was it? Yet, it was destroyed in a single day. It was said that after that battle, the Qin clan disbanded and the various branches split up. There were even many internal conflicts. Maybe it was because of the uneven distribution of resources and because there weren't any characters that could intimidate the other hegemonic powers. Qin Yuanfeng's name resounded through the supreme ancient immortal realms. Once, he was abandoned by the Qin clan. Today, he returned and buried the Qin clan. What a legend this was. He controlled the force of the 6 paths and could ignore the heavenly Daos. He could fight against the heavenly deities of the Qin clan alone. Qin Zheng couldn't even withstand a single strike. Someone said that Qin Yuanfeng's strength was comparable to the Grim Reaper. Everyone was speculating, between Qin Yuanfeng and the 8 ancient god kings, who was stronger. As the Qin clan was destroyed, the secret of the divine mausoleum was also exposed. It was a trap set up by the ancient god king, the moon god. He borrowed Qin Wentian's body to return and was extremely powerful, almost killing Qin Wentian. However, the number 1 genius of the supreme ancient immortal realms, Qin Wentian relied on his heaven-defying abilities to communicate with countless constellations and broke the moon god's eye. He still defeated Qin Wentian. Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Wentian, the father and son duo, could conquer the world. The sharpness they displayed caused the supreme ancient immortal realms to sigh in admiration. Because of the appearance of the moon god, there were more discussions about the 8 great godly kings. Many people searched for ancient records and flipped through some of the surviving legends of the 8 great godly kings. They knew of some of the deeds of the 8 great godly kings. Among the 8 great godly kings, there was an extremely evil and terrifying existence. He once wanted to use the lives of the common people to achieve his own Tao. He was incomparably cruel and the godly King Gu. God King Gu's name was extremely legendary. It was said that very few people knew of his name because he was an orphan. According to the limited ancient records, God King Gu's life was extremely miserable. This was why he hated the common people and viewed human lives as grass. He basically didn't place the lives of others in his eyes. He was incomparably cruel and once controlled the Yellow region. Everyone in the entire region feared him. God King Gu had a myriad of incarnations and could be said to be an undying existence. He could even devour the energy of others and transform into them. He cultivated the evil Tao and stepped on a path of no return. These rumors seemed to fit with a certain expert of this era. That person was none other than Yu Changkong. In addition, there were more and more rumors about Yu Changkong. Everyone in the world knew that he was a reincarnated cultivator. Hence, many people guessed that Yu Changkong was none other than the reincarnation of one of the 8 ancient god kings, the Yellow region's god king. At this moment, Yu Changkong was in a desolate mountain range. This boundlessly vast mountain range was enveloped by a layer of black fog. There was no aura of life at all. The wild beasts here had all died, buried within the black fog. In the center of the black fog, Yu Changkong sat cross-legged. Numerous faces appeared around him, and one of the faces was none other than Qin Dangtian's face. How long do you still want to protect him? Yu Changkong's voice was filled with disdain. His lips curled up into a sinister smile. I know you are filled with reluctance in your heart. You plotted for countless years and should have returned to the supreme ancient immortal realms. Yet, you were captured by me. How can you be willing to be refined by me? However, the era is no longer the same. The era that belonged to you has already passed. Look at the young man who fought against Qin Dangtian and his father, who is also your tomb keeper. Are they strong? They are the main characters of this era. If you and I want to regain control of this era, we have to become one and regain the glory of the past. Yu Changkong continued, his voice filled with bewitchment. Who are you talking to exactly? Qin Dangtian stared at Yu Changkong as he coldly asked. You have no right to speak here. Yu Changkong glanced at Qin Dangtian. Could it be that you really think you can rely on your own strength to fight against Qin Wentian? Qin Wentian is someone who can defeat me. You, the so-called Heaven's Son, are basically not qualified to be his opponent. Without his strength, your Dao is so weak that it can't even withstand a single strike. Right now, your parents have already committed suicide and your clansmen are scattered. It's best if you don't have any delusions in your heart. Qin Dangtian's expression contorted, becoming extremely unsightly. It was like he still had his own thoughts. Look, his heart has long crumbled. Why is there a need to use him to resist me? You should know that it's not impossible for me to devour you forcibly, but I don't wish for that to happen. You should know what I need. I need your complete strength, I need your Dao. I need it to be the same as what you obtained from him. I want your Dao to be directly passed on to me. Yu Changkong's eyes gleamed with a terrifying evil light. My patience is limited. Let's work together and conquer the supreme ancient immortal realms. If you don't obey, from now on, you will disappear completely. Yu Changkong's voice grew even colder. Behind him, a crescent moon appeared, incomparably resplendent, shining down on Qin Dangtian's head. Come, give me your complete Dao. Let us perfectly fuse together, becoming a brand new God King. This era belongs to us. Yu Changkong continued to tempt Qin Dangtian. Qin Dangtian's face gradually drifted towards the crescent moon. A resplendent light radiated forth, transforming into another crescent moon that fused together with the one above Yu Changkong's head. How can this be? Qin Dangtian's expression contorted madly. Why was he unable to control himself at this moment? It felt like there was a mysterious power controlling everything. In the divine mausoleum, we became existences that transformed into the Tao. Moon God, our legend has only just begun. The smile on Yu Changkong's face grew more and more sinister. As the two crescent moons fused together, an incomparably resplendent beam of moonlight radiated forth. In an instant, this entire space turned into night. The boundless black fog dissipated as a full moon appeared, illuminating everything. Within the full moon, an incomparably imposing figure appeared. This figure was like a moon god. Finally, it has ended. Yu Changkong spoke in an extremely sinister voice. Everything in the supreme ancient immortal realms would be ended by him. Right now, it was unknown how strong that fellow from the Western Paradise was. In the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect, Qin Wentian and the others returned. The destruction of the Qin clan could be considered to have resolved one of his worries. However, the conflict in the supreme ancient immortal realms has yet to end. Qin Wentian knew that he still had two great enemies. Yu Changkong was someone he had to kill. He would never forget the death of Lil Yi. However, his father said that Yu Changkong might be the reincarnation of a god king. Now that he has devoured the moon goddess, he would surely grow stronger and would recover to his peak sooner or later. In truth, Qin Wentian already understood from the previous battle that the current Yu Changkong was no longer the Yu Changkong of the past. The other enemy was the Western Paradise. This hypocritical Buddhist sect was cruel and tyrannical. They were the main culprit behind Lil Ye's death. They were also the masterminds behind the attacks of the various experts in the supreme ancient immortal realms. They almost buried him in the Western Paradise, becoming the reincarnation Buddha. Once they succeeded, he would have already died. As for the Heaven Vault, if it wasn't for his father arriving in time, he didn't dare to imagine what the consequences would be. Even now, he still couldn't forget the farewell words of Qing, and Yu Huang in his mind. These two enemies were far stronger compared to the Qin clan. Given his current strength, he was still far from being able to deal with them. Even his father might not be able to deal with them. Those two were true god kings. At this moment, Qin Wentian and his father sat together. Qin Wentian asked, "Father, there are two strongest types of moon god Tao. The first is the moon god's eye. It can borrow the power of the heavens and cause the world to fall into a great illusion. This is the ultimate form of the space-time illusion Tao. The other is the Tao of destruction, able to destroy all Taos in the world. When the two of them are combined, there's nothing they can't do. Back then when I fought against Qin Dangtian, just a little bit of the moon god's power was almost enough to cause me to fall. In addition, Yu Changkong's Tao of destruction isn't strong enough. If I really encounter the ultimate form of the moon god in the future, what kind of Tao would I be able to contend against it?" Qin Yuanfeng shook his head. "There are countless Taos in the world. If one doesn't reach that level, no one would know how strong the limits of Taos are. There's no need for you to think about how to comprehend a specific Tao. You should follow your heart state and comprehend your own unique Tao. You have a heavenly advantage, you can communicate with countless constellations and have boundless possibilities. Any Tao can be born from you. You have to believe in yourself and be able to create your own Tao." Qin Wentian nodded lightly. Although he won against Yu Changkong in the battle at the Qin clan, he still felt that the moon god's ability was too tyrannical. The Western Paradise had a myriad of Buddhist arts and was said to have 1,000 Tao arts and 10,000 innate techniques. Although the god king of the Western Paradise was heavily injured and had to spend countless years to recover, how strong was he now? How terrifying was his Tao? All of these gave him a lot of pressure. "Senior brother." At this moment, a voice rang out. Jun Mengchen walked over. "Mengchen." Qin Wentian smiled. "Senior brother, I've already gathered everyone. Also, keep an eye on the Thunder Clan." Jun Mengchen spoke. "Okay, I'll be there soon." Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with coldness. The people of the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect said that the Thunder Clan was extremely proactive when they attacked the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect. The first to jump out was a heavenly deity from the Thunder Clan. The disciples of the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect all died tragically. "I'll go over and wait for you." Jun Mengchen's silhouette flashed as he left. Qin Yuanfeng stared at Jun Mengchen as a smile appeared on his face. "Wentian, this junior brother of yours is truly extraordinary." Chapter 1997. The Thunder Clan was located in one of the 8 regions of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms. Back then when the experts of the Supreme Ancient Immortal Realms attacked the Heaven Vault, the experts of the Thunder Clan were the happiest. They were incomparably tyrannical and fearless, using thunder to pave the way, killing the people of the Divine Sect. But now, the experts of the Thunder Clan were filled with worry. The more they jumped, the more intense the fear they felt now. The Qin clan was already destroyed. A powerful hegemonic power in the Heaven region has become history. Some died, some scattered, and the heavenly deities all died. Ever since the Qin clan was destroyed, there wasn't a day where the experts of the Thunder Clan didn't live in worry. They were afraid of the future. The Thunder Clan leader went to the Western Paradise of the Universe region, but they didn't manage to come to an agreement. After the Thunder Clan leader returned, he cursed the Western Paradise for being despicable, actually throwing stones at them when they were down. As for what he discussed with the Buddhas of the Western Paradise, the people of the Thunder Clan had no idea. The heavenly deities of the Thunder Clan also discussed whether they should temporarily hide. However, the vast Thunder Clan had billions of people. Even if they fled, how could they flee? The target was too big, there was basically no way for them to flee. The only way was for them to disband and flee. But even if this was the case, the heavenly deities of the Thunder Clan felt reluctance in their hearts. After cultivating to the heavenly deity realm, what did they count as if they were stray dogs before the enemies arrived? In the end, the Qin clan still chose to wait and fight. The Thunder Clan could rely on their countless years of foundation. It wasn't that they didn't have the strength to fight. Although they were already mentally prepared, when Qin Wentian led the heavenly deity army over, the experts of the Thunder Clan still felt their hearts trembling. Fear filled their hearts. In the majestic lightning god fortress, countless people stared at the heavenly deity army in the air. This was the strength of the heaven vault. There were actually so many heavenly deities here. In the supreme ancient immortal realms, who could be mentioned in the same breath as them? Most probably, only the Western Paradise could. The Heaven Vault became a hegemonic power in the supreme ancient immortal realms with a single leap, standing above the peak powers. The Thunder Clan leader stood below and stared at the sky. His divine sense swept out and he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Qin Wentian led his army here, but Qin Yuanfeng didn't come. Qin Yuanfeng was the truly terrifying existence. He was so strong that even heavenly deities couldn't win against him. Even the Qin clan leader Qin Zheng couldn't withstand a single strike from him. The heavenly deities of the Qin clan joined forces, but they were all slaughtered. Qin Wentian was like a god king, they were like ants. Luckily, he didn't clan Qin Wentian Qin clan's Qin god. Qin clan Qin world. The Thunder Clan leader called out. In the past, I did indeed offend you in some ways. However, that was the general situation and not my clan. Today, I'm willing to apologize for my actions in the past. If you need any compensation, I can give it to you. From now onwards, the Thunder Clan has nothing to do with the Heaven Vault. How about it? Qin Wentian stood in the air, staring down at the figures below. His expression was cold. What a joke. Why are people in the world always like this? When they are complacent, they would act arrogantly. When they are inferior to others, they would think of apologizing, wanting to forget everything. Everything in the world can be resolved so easily. Would there still be the word hatred? I killed your people. When your strength surpasses mine, all you have to do is apologize and everything will end? I heard that when the Thunder Clan slaughtered their way into my Qin Heavenly Divine Sect, you were extremely imposing and domineering. Where is your prestige from back then? Qin Wentian laughed. However, his laughter was filled with mockery. His eyes flickered with cold killing intent. If he spared the Thunder Clan, wouldn't the disciples of the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect have died for nothing? They were filled with hot blood and died for the sake of the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect. If he didn't take revenge, how would he be able to face the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect? In the past, although my Thunder Clan did offend you, you merely killed a few disciples of the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect. My Thunder Clan is willing to pay a huge price, why must you force us? The Thunder Clan leader showed weakness. Merely killed a few disciples of the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect. Qin Wentian's eyes grew colder. He stared at the Thunder Clan leader and icily spoke, your life can't even be compared to a single disciple of the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect. Today, you shall die. As the sound of his voice faded, an intense killing intent gushed forth from Qin Wentian. The might of heavenly Tao gushed forth, instantly enveloping the entire sky. Qin Wentian stepped out, he was like a god king, lofty, his divine might engulfing the entire Thunder Clan. The Thunder Clan leader stared at Qin Wentian with an unsightly expression on his face. Since Qin Wentian wasn't willing to spare the Thunder Clan, they could only fight. Not long ago, in the battle at the Qin clan, Qin Wentian defeated Qin Dangtian, who obtained the Moon God's inheritance. In the Western Paradise, he domineeringly killed the Karma Buddha and even caused the reincarnation Buddha Lord to die. From this, one could see that right now, Qin Wentian's strength was already above the hegemonic characters of the hegemonic powers. But even so, it wasn't as if his Thunder Clan had no way to fight back. The heavenly deity race that had existed for countless years had incomparably deep foundations. Qin Wentian only saw the Thunder Clan leader retreating. He waved his hand and in an instant, the area below the Thunder Clan suddenly erupted with boundless lightning. The entire Thunder Clan seemed to have been born with a lightning divine formation. Terrifying lightning bolts soared up into the sky, causing intense rumbling sounds of thunder to ring out. Violet lightning covered the entire sky, and in a short instant, this boundlessly vast region seemed to have transformed into a world of lightning. Everyone lowered their heads and stared at the Thunder Clan. The entire Thunder Clan was radiating a dazzling light, exuding a supreme destructive Tao intent. It was like a god-slaying grand formation, and in the center of the formation, a supremely powerful divine weapon could be seen. This was none other than the clear sky divine hammer used by the Thunder Clan leader. This supremely powerful divine weapon was the primer of this formation. Other than this, there were 8 other divine weapons in all 8 directions of the Thunder Clan. Each of these divine weapons was extremely terrifying, and now, they were all part of this divine formation. From this, one could very well imagine how terrifying the might of this formation was. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the sky. Although this formation used the Thunder Clan as its foundation, the true destructive force was actually above the sky. In the boundless space, the vast sky transformed into a world of destructive lightning. Numerous divine hammers and gigantic drums appeared in the air. Clearly, the Thunder Clan had long been prepared and was waiting for their arrival. How could the powerful heavenly deity race sit still and wait for death? Careful. Qin Wentian could sense the might of this formation as he reminded the heavenly deities beside him. Everyone nodded. Now that the heavenly deity army had arrived, they mustn't let the Thunder Clan find a chance to kill them. Not a single one of them must be lost. Qin Wentian, why must you force me? The Thunder Clan leader stepped out. As the sound of his voice faded, the thunder god drums in the air started to tremble. Everyone only felt a heaven-shaking rumble in their souls, wanting to shatter everything. Their bodies also felt an inconceivable destructive might, causing some heavenly deities to groan in misery as their countenances instantly turned pale. Qin Wentian, let me ask you again. Are you willing to stop now? My Thunder Clan is still willing to apologize and offer compensation. The Thunder Clan leader spoke. He was bathed in boundless divine lightning, like a divine lord in the sky, controlling the 9 heavenly layers of lightning. He was unexcelled in this world, he still didn't want to start a war. Even if they could block this army of heavenly deities, there was still a heaven-defying existence like Qin Yuanfeng behind their backs. No one would be able to block him. Are you sure you want to resist like this? Qin Wentian glanced at the Thunder Clan leader as he spoke with cold disdain. When he saw the coldness in his eyes, as well as the arrogance in his voice, the Thunder Clan leader felt a sense of unease in his heart. However, he still stood there proudly and spoke, seems like you still don't want to give up. Since this is the case, we can only fight. As the sound of his voice faded, he stepped out again. Thunder rumbled, ignoring the distance between them. Everyone only felt a world-destroying might pressing down on them, wanting to destroy their souls and destroy their bodies. And at this moment, Qin Wentian stepped out. He stretched out both his hands as heavenly Tao light radiated forth. In an instant, a space-time appeared, enveloping the heavenly deities around him. At this moment, there seemed to be a mysterious energy in the air, causing the incoming divine lightning to sink into it, gradually dissipating into nothingness. Is this the power of space-time banishment? The heart of the Thunder Clan leader turned cold. He waved his hands unceasingly, causing the divine lightning in the sky to tremble violently. Qin Wentian's mind trembled violently, he could faintly sense that he was in the middle of an ocean of lightning, facing the destructive power of the ocean. He felt so tiny and insignificant in comparison. Go in. Qin Wentian coldly spat out 2 words. The boundless divine lightning that descended from the sky started to collapse, being sealed within the spacetime he created. It was like they were banished, but at the same time, they seemed to be sealed there. The violet light of lightning continued to descend, but it also disappeared unceasingly. The Thunder Clan leader stared at Qin Wentian, his countenance extremely unsightly to behold. This fellow, what sort of Tao art was this? Why must you do this? Qin Wentian coldly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, the energy from that spacetime actually gushed forth, gushing towards the Thunder Clan. At this instant, the energy sealed within erupted forth, akin to the end of the world. Everything was destroyed, the buildings collapsed frenziedly. The experts of the Thunder Clan fled for their lives, only the heavenly deities remained, protecting them. How can this be? The countenance of the Thunder Clan leader turned ashen when he saw this. Qin Wentian was actually able to seal their offensive divine arts and use them to attack them. This was too much of a blow to his confidence. Was that merely a manifestation of the Tao of spacetime? Clearly, that was impossible. There was even a sealing Tao art infused within. From today onwards, the Thunder Clan shall cease to exist. Qin Wentian coldly spoke. That destructive spacetime forcefully blasted towards the Thunder Clan. For a moment, everything in the surroundings was being destroyed. Cracking sounds rang out as the divine formation collapsed. The experts of the Thunder Clan were directly exposed to the heavenly deity army led by Qin Wentian. The Haotian divine hammer flew back into the hands of the Thunder Clan leader. However, his countenance was ashen as a look of disappointment appeared on his face. He knew that there was no more chance. Qin Wentian actually forcefully broke the defensive grand formation of the Thunder Clan. Chapter 1998. Qin Wentian directly walked towards the Thunder Clan leader. His killing intent was ice-cold as a terrifying spacetime Tao gushed forth, sealing the Thunder Clan leader. Kill! Jun Mengchen and the others stepped out, moving towards the experts of the Thunder Clan. Their eyes flickered with killing intent. Once, the Thunder Clan was unexcelled in the world, killing their way into the Qin Heavenly Divine sect and even surrounding Qin Wentian's family. How arrogant was that? Now, the Thunder Clan leader said that he only killed a few disciples of the divine sect. How ridiculous was that? A single punch from Jun Mengchen was comparable to the power of an entire world, capable of shattering everything, burying heavenly deities and causing the sky to tremble. The might of his punch was unexcelled in this world, causing the Thunder Clan members below to explode into pieces. Little Rascal's sharp claws stretched out. He transformed into a gigantic astral beast and his claws radiated a terrifying devouring energy. When he slashed out, he wanted to devour the entire Thunder Clan, just like how he devoured the Ziwei Divine Court back then. Below, screams of misery rang out unceasingly. It was unknown how many people died. The vast Thunder Clan was soon turned into ruins. The divine formation was destroyed. How could the Thunder Clan resist the power of the gods? Back then, the various deities of the supreme ancient heavenly realms joined forces to attack the Heaven Vault, but they couldn't do so. Now, they were facing the experts of the Heaven Vault alone. From this, one could very well imagine the situation. They basically had no strength to resist at all. The Thunder Clan leader said that he only killed a few disciples of the divine sect. From this, one could very well imagine how arrogant he was, treating the disciples of the divine sect like ants. But right now, the people of the Qin Heavenly Divine sect also treated the people of the Thunder Clan as ants. Even the Thunder Clan leader himself was also an ant in the eyes of Qin Wentian. His life in the eyes of Qin Wentian was inferior compared to the disciples of the divine sect. Hence, his fate was already determined. Screams of misery rang out unceasingly. The Thunder Clan leader howled in rage. He was suppressed by Qin Wentian. The chaotic spacetime, the folding of space, slowly destroyed his will to fight. Even with the clear sky divine hammer in his hand, he still couldn't block Qin Wentian's attacks. In terms of comprehension of the heavenly Tao, Qin Wentian had already surpassed him. With a loud roar, the Thunder Clan leader wielded the clear sky divine hammer, breaking through all restrictions and appeared before Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian manifested an even more terrifying storm. Qin Wentian grabbed out with his hands, creating a spatial tear that appeared before the Thunder Clan leader. The Thunder Clan leader wanted to dodge when he saw that the situation was "Stop spacetime." A cold voice rang out from Qin Wentian's mouth. In an instant, the entire spacetime seemed to have fallen into silence. The body of the Thunder Clan leader froze, even the blood in his body seemed to have stopped flowing. The thunderous booms slowed down, wanting to directly tear apart the Tao of stop spacetime. However, it seemed that it was already too late. That spatial tear of darkness engulfed everything, directly devouring the body of the Thunder Clan leader, sending him into that spacetime. Qin Wentian's Dao arts didn't stop. A terrifying spacetime sealing Dao gushed forth, blasting into that spacetime. Boom, boom, boom. Thunderous sounds rang out from the void. It didn't seem to originate from this spacetime, but from another spacetime. It seemed like the Thunder Clan leader was retaliating, but his retaliation grew weaker and weaker. The Dao might radiating from Qin Wentian still hadn't vanished. Finally, a cold voice rang out, "Banish." As the sound of his voice faded, that spacetime was already banished to an unknown location. The Thunder Clan leader, an unexcelled heavenly deity, also vanished together with that spacetime. Below, countless people who were still alive inclined their heads and stared at their clan leader being banished. Terror filled their hearts as despair appeared in their eyes. They knew that the Thunder Clan, this powerful clan that had existed for countless years, was finished. They were the same as the Qin clan, becoming a speck of dust in the history of the supreme ancient immortal realms. In the future, they would only appear in the history books, and maybe, their appearance in the history books was only to serve as a foil to Qin Wentian's existence. The battle continued, but the fluctuations grew weaker and weaker until the boundlessly vast Thunder Clan was completely destroyed. The heavenly deities of the Thunder Clan were all killed. Only then did everything come to an end. The army from the Heaven Vault didn't continue attacking. They understood that the Thunder Clan would no longer be able to climb back up. They would vanish forever. At this moment, in the ruins of the Thunder Clan, a figure crawled out. His entire body was covered in blood. He inclined his head and stared at Qin Wentian, who was in the air. The wind gusted by, fluttering his white robes. He was so dazzling and outstanding, but in the eyes of this expert from the Thunder Clan, there was only the flames of anger. Qin Wentian, you are so cruel and tyrannical. You annihilated the heavenly deities of the Qin clan and even massacred the Thunder Clan. Could it be that your rise is because you want the entire supreme ancient immortal realms to be your foil? Even if there comes a day when you dominate the supreme ancient immortal realms, the heavenly deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms would all fall, causing the once prosperous supreme ancient immortal realms to fall. Is this your purpose? That expert from the Thunder Clan roared in rage, his eyes blazing with fire. Qin Wentian glanced at him. There were no fluctuations of emotions in his cold eyes. He turned and walked away, basically not bothering about the other party. Everyone in the world was selfish, they would only consider things from their own standpoint. When they destroyed the Heaven Vault, did they ever think about these things? Right now, why would he need to explain anything? Qin clan, Thunder Clan. If his father didn't arrive back then and the Heaven Vault was destroyed, he would have massacred the entire supreme ancient immortal realms. Let alone heavenly deities, he wouldn't even spare those at the lower cultivation realms. How would he be so merciful? He wasn't a devil, he wouldn't kill the innocent. But he was also no saint. He wouldn't be able to forgive those who wanted to kill his wife, his friends, and family. Jun Mengchen's eyes flashed with anger when he heard the words of the other party. He grabbed out in the air, directly grabbing the body of the other party. He coldly spoke, "Only you guys are allowed to deal with my Heaven Vault, can't you take revenge?" How laughable. So what if you killed all the deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms? My senior brother is still alive, our Heaven Vault is still alive. In the future, the supreme ancient immortal realms will have an even stronger army of heavenly deities, countless times stronger compared to the current supreme ancient immortal realms. The expression of that expert froze. Jun Mengchen's arrogant words weren't without reason. The army of heavenly deities in the Heaven Vault was an example. With the existence of the Heaven Vault, the supreme ancient immortal realms might truly become a golden age in the future. I'll wait. That person coldly spoke. You want to wait? Wishful thinking. You have made me very angry. Hence, you won't be able to see that day. As the sound of Jun Mengchen's voice faded, that person's expression drastically changed. After that, a giant palm imprint directly smashed down, burying him alive. They were merciful, they wouldn't kill everyone. As long as the target wasn't a heavenly deity, they could spare the lives of those who were still alive. But don't ever provoke their mercy. Next target. Jun Mengchen coldly spoke. Those people who slaughtered their way into the heaven vault wanted to continue being the hegemons of the supreme ancient immortal realms with a clear conscience, enjoying the blessings from all directions, enjoying boundless glory. Stop dreaming. The people of the Qin heavenly divine sect wouldn't die for nothing. The grudge of the heaven vault must never be forgotten. Could it be that if the Qin heavenly divine sect didn't care about this matter, those people would be filled with gratitude? Wrong. If they were truly merciful enough to spare these hegemonic powers, they wouldn't hesitate to slaughter their way into the heaven vault if there was another opportunity. In addition, they wouldn't show any mercy at all. The Che clan was also located in the supreme ancient immortal realms. When Qin Wendian and the others arrived at the Che clan, they discovered that the divine clan that was once the #1 weaponsmithing aristocrat clan in the supreme ancient immortal realms had suddenly vanished. Numerous buildings were destroyed, transforming into ruins. It was like they were destroyed by someone. Outside the Che clan, countless people stared at the #1 weaponsmithing aristocrat clan in the supreme ancient immortal realms as they sighed. The #1 weaponsmithing aristocrat clan in the supreme ancient immortal realms actually fled? In addition, they destroyed everything in the clan, even the divine formations were destroyed by them. These fellows are truly ruthless. Chi Yu spoke. They actually gave up the glory of being the #1 aristocrat clan in the supreme ancient immortal realms just like that and fled. Qin Wentian's divine sense swept through the area, but he truly didn't discover any silhouettes. At this moment, a figure flew over from the air and spoke to Qin Wentian. I pay my respects to sect leader. What's going on? Qin Wentian asked. I've been monitoring the movements of the Che clan outside. A period of time ago, a heaven-shaking commotion suddenly occurred in the Che clan. Boundless divine light shone as though a divine formation was activated. After that, many people directly activated the divine formations and left. After that, the divine formations of the Che clan erupted as boundless divine might radiated forth. No one knew what happened inside, and after that, things became like this. That person replied. Qin Wentian didn't say anything. They sent people to monitor the various clans, but they wouldn't send heavenly deities. After all, every heavenly deity would be very conspicuous. If they were to be exposed, it would be extremely dangerous. Since the Che clan wanted to flee, it was only normal that they couldn't monitor them. At this moment, Chi Yu walked out from behind. He spoke to Qin Wentian. Saint Lord, the guards of the Five Elements sect said that not long ago, a black fog descended and enveloped the Five Elements sect. After that, the people from the Five Elements sect all vanished. Yu Changkong. A cold light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes. Yu Changkong had also started to act. Also, when he destroyed the Thunder clan, most probably all the hegemonic powers in the supreme ancient immortal realms already knew about it. It was impossible for there to be no spies in the vicinity of the Thunder clan. Hence, everyone would want to retreat. The Che clan was like this, the Five Elements sect was the same as well. These heavenly deities of the supreme ancient immortal realms clearly wouldn't sit still and wait for death. Let's return for now. Qin Wentian fell silent for a moment before he spoke. Everyone nodded. Seems like the situation in the supreme ancient immortal realms would undergo a huge change. In the future, it might no longer be the era where the 8 regions rose up together. Qin Wentian and the others left the Che clan and returned to the Heaven Vault. The ruins of the Che clan were still there, but no one knew that there was another independent dimension sealed there. In that dimension, the sky was golden and boundless divine flames could be seen within. It was like they wanted to forge the #1 divine weapon in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Despite the efforts of the entire Che clan, even after so many years, this divine weapon has yet to be forged. They have left. At this moment, someone walked to the side of the Che clan leader and spoke. The Che clan leader nodded his head lightly. They used the divine formation to escort the Che clan leader away, but it was merely a smokescreen. In truth, the experts of the Che clan had all entered this spacetime and used the divine weapon that was being forged to conceal the auras of this spacetime. Qin Wentian also wouldn't be able to discover them. Chapter 1999. After Qin Wentian returned to the Heaven Vault, news from various places started to arrive. The God Extermination Palace, Prison God Clan and the other peak powers that participated in the attack on the Heaven Vault have all vanished. They were the same as the Che clan and Five Elements sect. Before this, they had a trace of hope like the Thunder clan. But after the Thunder clan was destroyed, they completely woke up. Qin Wentian would make them disappear from the supreme ancient immortal realms. When the news spread out in the primeval times, only then did the people of the world truly realize that the era where the top powers of the 8 regions rose together had already completely become history. An era had ended. In this era, the experts of the 8 regions contended against each other, vying for supremacy. Eventually, a delicate balance was formed. The hegemonic powers of the 8 regions ruled the supreme ancient immortal realms, everyone in the world submitted to them. In fact, they even divided the immortal realms in the lower world with the exception of Azure Mystic. But all of this, with the rise of the Heaven Vault, no longer existed. After that, some rumors circulated in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Those powers that vanished all followed Yu Changkong. In order to avoid Qin Wentian's pursuit, they all became Yu Changkong's disciples. Yu Changkong might have the strength of 2 god kings. In this new era, there would definitely be a place for him. In addition, he would only grow stronger and stronger. After these rumors spread out, everyone in the world said that the old era had passed. The current era of the supreme ancient immortal realms belonged to 3 major powers. Qin Yuanfeng and Qin Wentian were the leaders of the Heaven Vault, which was also known as the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect. Other than Qin Yuanfeng, the other powers all relied on themselves to rise up. Because of the Heaven Vault's unique advantage, they were able to create an army of heavenly deities. Right now, even the supreme ancient immortal realms had to look up to them. Other than being extremely powerful, the Heaven Vault also had a good relationship with the Tiandao Sacred Academy. Although the Tiandao Sacred Academy wouldn't interfere with external affairs, the headmaster of the Tiandao Sacred Academy who was in seclusion was someone who couldn't be ignored. Finally, Qin Wentian was the inheritor of the Grim Reaper. They forced the various hegemonic powers to submit to Yu Changkong. Hence, one could say that the old era of the Heaven Vault had ended. The second power naturally belonged to Yu Changkong. He who had the power of 2 god kings, was extremely mysterious and evil. Not only that, he was able to make those experts from the supreme ancient immortal realm submit to him. They had the power to threaten the Heaven Vault and were unfathomably deep. As for the final power, there was no need to doubt that it was the Western world. This world had existed for countless years and had always ruled over the Western world. There had never been any disturbances and there were many Buddha lords among them. There were also quite a few heavenly deity-level sacred Buddhas. But what was truly terrifying was that it was rumored that the God King who founded the universe region, the Lord of the Western Paradise, might not have died yet and was still alive. The 3 legs of the supreme ancient immortal realms once again reached a delicate balance. This caused the supreme ancient immortal realms to have a period of peace. During this period of time, there were many new people rising up and old people falling. Along with the current situation in the supreme ancient immortal realms, many things regarding Qin Wentian were dug out. The history of his growth was slowly revealed to the world. Once, who would have thought that a young genius who came from the mystic region and became famous after participating in the convention of the myriad realms would end an era and create a brand new history? At that time, Qin Wentian was merely a young man with slightly more outstanding talent. He was known as a transcendent-level world overlord and was given the title of Qingqing Realm Lord. If one traced back to the past, the title of Qingqing Realm Lord was something he fought his way up step by step. He was once an insignificant immortal and had even become a bandit, working under the Lifire Empyrean. Finally, he climbed up step by step, replacing the Lifire Empyrean and killing the lifelong Realm Lord. Up until today, everyone in the world looked up to him in admiration. Every legendary character would have an extremely tough history. At that time, no one knew about them. They experienced all sorts of trials and tribulations until one day, everyone in the world knew of them. Qin Wentian was the legend of this era. Right now, in the Qingqing realm, there would be a large number of cultivators going out to see the outside world. For example, they would go to the heaven region, to the boundless sea region. The legends of Qin Wentian were being circulated around the Qingqing realm every day. The juniors all had boundless yearning in their hearts, all of them fantasizing that one day, they would be able to create their own legend. However, how could it be so easy to create a legend? Qin Wentian didn't know that even though he didn't return to the Qingqing realm, he had already become the spiritual pillar of the Qingqing realm, inspiring countless juniors to cultivate. They were like moths flying into a flame, pursuing their own path to the peak. Time flowed by, the tripartite balance of power in the supreme ancient immortal realms was unshakable. Even if there were new Empyreans in the supreme ancient immortal realms, or even heavenly deities, they basically didn't have the qualifications to establish a power. Everyone in the world was very clear that the current supreme ancient immortal realms belonged to the three peak powers. Also, the peace now was merely the calm before the storm. The three strongest powers in the supreme ancient immortal realms would clash sooner or later. The victor would become the supreme ancient immortal realms king. Right now, many people in the supreme ancient immortal realms were discussing. In the future, which of the three strongest powers in the supreme ancient immortal realms would be able to become the supreme ancient immortal realms king? Leaving aside the newly risen powers, even for the hegemonic powers of the past, the Qiankuan sect and Nine Heavens mystical palace, they had already lost the qualifications to contend for the position of the supreme ancient immortal realms king. They could only be spectators. But because they didn't offend any of the hegemonic powers, they were still able to exist in the supreme ancient immortal realms unscathed. They had once formed an alliance with Qin Wentian. Although they left the alliance, Qin Wentian wasn't someone who would repay kindness with enmity. After all, these two hegemonic powers had helped him before. After that, they didn't act against the Heaven Vault and naturally wouldn't act against them. In addition, because they were in the Heaven region, they were in the same region as the Heaven Vault. Even if Yu Changkong and the Western Paradise had some thoughts, it wouldn't be good for them to act against them. At this moment, outside the Heaven Vault, in the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect, two figures flew over. One was a man and the other was a woman. The two of them exuded transcendent auras and the woman was extremely beautiful. They were none other than the Qiankuan sect and Nine Heavens mystical palace. The two of them inclined their heads and stared at everything before them. Right now, the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect has expanded again compared to the past. It was incomparably majestic and was also near the Heaven Vault. Right now, it was already a holy ground of the supreme ancient immortal realms. The number of people who came here to pay their respects was countless times more compared to the number of people who went to the Qiankuan sect and Nine Heavens mystical palace. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. Have you ever thought that in this place, you would be able to stand at the peak of the supreme ancient immortal realms? In addition, you would even have the chance to become the king of the supreme ancient immortal realms. The Qiankuan sect leader sighed. The beautiful eyes of the Nine Heavens mystical maiden stared ahead, she didn't say anything. Indeed, she didn't expect this. The changes in the supreme ancient immortal realms were simply too fast. The entire era was changing. Junior pays my respects to the Qiankuan sect leader and Nine Heavens mystical maiden. At this moment, someone from the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect walked out and bowed. The statuses of these two were transcendent and they were once close to Qin Wentian. Someone in the Divine Sect recognized them. "MHM, we are here to pay our respects to Sect Leader Qin." The Qiankuan Sect Leader nodded. Sect Leader should be cultivating in the Heaven Vault. Sect Leader, please enter the Divine Sect to rest first. We need to report this to the upper echelons. Can Sect Leader and Nine Heavens mystical maiden wait a little longer? That person spoke. The Qiankuan sect leader and Nine Heavens mystical maiden started. After that, they nodded lightly, feeling a little rueful in their hearts. Right now, given their statuses, they actually needed to report and wait to meet with Qin Wentian. If it was in the past, who wouldn't come over immediately if they wanted to meet with him? But now, things were different. They also understood this point and were accepting this change. Given Qin Wentian's current status, even if he didn't want to meet with them, what could they do? Qin Wentian already had the qualifications to do so. After all, they were the ones who betrayed the alliance. Sect leader and 9 Heavens mystical palace, please. That person who spoke politely spoke, leading the two of them into the divine sect. After they left, the person at the side spoke, did you discover that you are actually very calm when facing the Qiankuan sect leader and 9 Heavens mystical maiden? Michem. That person started. After that, he drew in a deep breath, feeling a sense of disbelief in his heart. The two of them were the Qiankuan sect leader and the #1 immortal in the mortal world. He still remembered that in the past, he would tremble with trepidation when facing a hegemonic-level world overlord. This was simply unbelievable. This was the confidence that came from the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect. We of the Divine Sect don't need to look up to anyone. As long as we work hard in our cultivation and are loyal to the Divine Sect, in the future when we enter the Heaven Vault to cultivate, we would also be able to become heavenly deities. He stared at the Heaven Vault in the air as a vision appeared in his heart. After the Qiankuan sect leader and 9 Heavens mystical maiden entered the Divine Sect, there were people with higher statuses receiving them. After waiting for some time, Qiyu and Jun Mengchen came out from the Heaven Vault to meet with the two of them. Sect leader and mystical maiden, I wonder what's the matter. Qiyu stared at the two of them as he calmly spoke. Jun Mengchen stood in front with his hands clasped behind his back. The aura radiating from the two of them caused the Qiankuan sect leader's expression to stiffen. Was this their change? Right now, the two of them were fighting there, their auras were no longer any weaker compared to him. It was like they could stand on equal footing with him. We wish to meet with Qin Wentian to discuss some matters. The Qiankuan sect leader spoke. Before Qiyu could say anything, Jun Mengchen's eyes flashed. He calmly spoke, Senior brother is very busy and is still in the midst of cultivation. If there's nothing important, you can just tell us about it. He did have some opinions about the Qiankuan sect and 9 Heavens mystical palace betraying the alliance back then. Since they were allies, they should advance and retreat together. But the other party chose to retreat because of the Western world. Hence, his tone wasn't polite at all. The Qiankuan sect leader felt somewhat unhappy when he heard Jun Mengchen's words. However, it wasn't appropriate for him to say anything. In addition, he could faintly sense that leaving aside his aura, just in terms of strength, this young man before him wasn't inferior to him at all. He had heard of the battle in the Heaven Vault back then. Jun Mengchen was the clan leader of the war chariot race and was extremely powerful. Now, so much time has passed and there was also a secret realm in the Heaven Vault that could change the flow of time. Although he was a junior, in the cultivation world, seniority was never determined based on age. He really couldn't say anything about Qin Wentian's impoliteness. Mengchen, how can you speak to the Qiankuan sect leader in such a manner? At this moment, a voice rang out from the Heaven Vault. It was none other than Qin Wentian's voice. Senior brother. Jun Mengchen inclined his head and called out. His tone was filled with reluctance, but since his senior brother Qin spoke, he wouldn't retort. Sect leader and mystical maiden, please come to the Heaven Vault for a discussion. Mengchen is still young, I hope seniors won't take offense. Qin Wentian's voice was polite. The Qiankuan sect leader and 9 Heavens mystical maiden both nodded. Even if Qin Wentian didn't apologize, they had nothing else to say.